decisions are made at our regular business meetings. With that being said, I'll also remind anybody who's using the microphones around the table or at the podium to please try to speak loudly and clearly into the microphone, and be careful if you turn your head to look over here, the mic won't necessarily pick it up. And so just be careful, and that'll help everybody to hear, including on Community 7 television. So with that, we'll open up for public comment on any item tonight, either on our agenda or off. There will be an opportunity for public comment on the specific agenda items when we get there. So we'd appreciate you. Probably you're better off waiting for your comments on those items until later, unless you've got to go, in which case the bathrooms are down there, or you can leave. So public comment on items on or not on the agenda.
Kevin Nelson, 4235 Bruce Avenue. Has to do with the Suburra maybe budget. During some of the TIF applications recently, there was a comment made by Councilman Shaw asking of Dick about in the event that the TIF gets expanded, if the $3 million for the pool is available. I would suggest take that $3 million and put it into the infrastructure at Amen Park. If any of you attended the Magic City Classic 2 weeks ago, you'll understand why that needs some serious attention down there. And my proposal would be to, in cooperation, and in the past, the Suburban Ditch has showed interest in enclosing the ditch, the Suburban Ditch, and then developing a walkway across the drain ditch, and then enclosing the ditch all the way to Southgate. So you would be able to come from the motels, walk up the path, hit a pedestrian controlled device, and then you would walk across King Avenue East into the Amen Park complex. And one of the reasons that sort of was headed for coffee on Saturday and Sunday morning at 4B's on Southgate. So when you're sitting at South Billings Boulevard going to cross over 7 o'clock in the morning, there's all the cars at Amen Park. You take a left down Southgate headed for 4B's, and that particular Saturday, because of that Magic City Classic, we've got parents, we've got backpacks, we've got wagons, we've got parents trying to figure out how are we going to get across King Avenue East right now. And it's really what I would consider somewhat of a really dangerous situation that's only going to get worse, because if everything works out, I mean, we're going to have a huge complex with a lot of people on a regular basis that hopefully are going to stay in the motels, that are going to get up and go to that hockey tournament, go to the courts, go to Amen Park. And I think the people that show up in our community deserve to have some comfort that they're relatively safe. Currently, that situation is not safe. And then take what money's left and start the process of enclosing the drain ditch all the way from South 12th all the way up to probably to Southgate. It solves your parking problem. I mean, what better than to have all the traffic just sitting right across King Avenue East? You could park buses along there. The kids would walk out, hit the button, they walk across the street safely right into the complex to whatever sport they're participating in that weekend. You could have another controlled device down at South 12th. That's there sort of by MDU. And, I was looking at today was you drive down South Billings or First Avenue South, and here's the Galis building is gone. I mean, that's demolished. And I'm thinking, okay, so now we got all this concrete. So let's put some culverts in and think of all the refuse that goes someplace that would just get put into the ditch as it got used. You would start backfilling that. It's just going to be a parking lot. It seemed to be a great use of items that we're going to essentially throw away. You just reuse it, asphalt it, a traffic control device, and I think you would have just a tremendous facility. You solve your parking problems, and you create a really safe environment for people, like I said, coming to town expecting to be somewhat safe when they cross the street. Thanks.
Thank you. Other public comment at this point? Is there any other public comment? Please come to the podium. Just tell us your name and address. Keep your comments to 3 minutes if you would.
Yes, sir. My name is Ryan Starks, address 225 Prospectors Lane. I'm here to speak about the custodial issue again. First thing is, if we had a 90-day contract and we were on 93 last week, why wasn't that brought up before? I mean, we're paying people quite a bit of money to make these agendas, and if they know how long the contract is, don't you think that would affect when it's up on the agenda, how long it takes to talk about it? Why are we waiting until, I mean, the first time I heard about it up on the city council meeting was day 60, maybe, and then it got pushed back a month. So then now we're past a month. Second thing is, these people were negotiated into our Teamster contract. We were first left with an option to not give them a raise at all. And as an equipment operator, I got a large raise. But our option was to either not give them a raise at all and take our bigger raise, or to help our fellow brothers in our Teamster union and wait for them to get something. So these jobs were negotiated into the contract. Their raises were negotiated into the contract. You're taking away union jobs if you go forward with this, and you're already giving the cost of living to the company that's coming in because they get a 3% raise every year. The third thing is, where does this stop? You're gonna have a fight from the union if you're taking away union jobs. But where does this stop? Am I safe at solid waste because I'm picking up garbage? Because that's a Teamster job too. Is our street department safe? Our parks department safe? Those are all Teamster jobs. And if you're going forward with this, we're afraid it's going to set a precedence to where, okay, well, now we can just start chipping these guys off. And it's not going to be met without a fight. I can tell you that. So that's my concerns. I appreciate you guys listening to me again. Have a good night.
Very good. Thank you. Other public comment? Any other public comment on items on our agenda or not on our agenda?
Mayor, honorable council members, my name's Tom Iverson. I live at 2717 Hoover Avenue. I own Pride of Montana, Inc. We're a janitorial service. We were chosen as the most qualified to provide janitorial services for the new city hall based on the recent RFP. My company has been in Billings for 48 years. I've cleaned the Wells Fargo Tower since December 1976 when it opened. We cleaned numerous other banks, office buildings, downtown Billings for the last 20, 30, 40 years. Pride was hired by the city in January of 2022 to provide janitorial services for the Stillwater building. So back then what we did was the 4th floor restrooms, meeting room, elevator lobby, and we did the 3rd floor restrooms and the building lobby. So we did that since then. So currently we're providing services here now. We're cleaning the entire 5th floor. We're cleaning the restrooms on 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st, and the building lobby. And that's what we've been doing for the last 3 months here. My employees are properly trained, supervised, managed, and scheduled to do the job right. You can't clean a building like the Wells Fargo building for 48 years on a 30-day written notice contract. I could have been fired in 30 days from any of the building owners, okay? So I would highly recommend that you do what's in the best interest of the city employees that work here and the taxpayers, and go ahead and accept the janitorial contract. Okay, any questions? No?
Thank you very much. Other public comment? Any other public comment? At this time, there'll be an opportunity on those other items later. Van, are you coming forward? Don't be so shy. We'll wait unless you need to leave, in which case it's open season there as well.
Mayor, members of the council, I appear here today. I want to be very clear in my personal capacity, not as representative for the city of Billings.
And Ben, if you would introduce yourself.
Benjamin Halverson, Halverson. In the 9 to 5, I am a domestic violence prosecutor for the city of Billings, but I'm not that tonight. I'm here today in my personal capacity because this issue, what this body will do with what the legislature has inflicted upon us, is a personal issue to me and many of my colleagues. And for those of us who were born, raised in Billings, who have families here, the legislature in the state of Montana, as it often does, is taking advantage of this city, of its most stable and reliable tax base through legislation enacted by the legislature. Despite efforts of our local delegation to the contrary, the legislature made an egregious mistake that can only be mitigated or exacerbated here by what city council elects to do. City council does not act except guidance from the state of Montana. It's my personal opinion that will have the practical impact of defunding the police and defunding a number of jobs and related services, for example, that have targeted the scourge of domestic violence. All the progress this city has made in the last 5 years with respect to domestic violence particularly stands to disappear at best, or at worst, will invite escalating violence that will be unaddressed, leaving victims and children as the casualties of a decision not to defy the legislature. The citizens of this community demand bold leadership and support of its most essential services. Without that leadership, without that kind of action, those of us who live here, not just those of us who are employed by the city, may be forced to rethink their commitment to this community, and their willingness to live here without it. I hope that my family of 3 is not one of them. Please support us and your community by doing what the legislature has directed you to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment? Any other public comment at this point? Again, there'll be an opportunity later for the 3 items on our agenda. And also at the very end for any items not on our agenda. Okay, we'll close the public comment period at this point and move ahead to our first item, the Tourism Business Improvement District update. Chris, you want to just open? There you are. You're just going to turn it over to our TV. Okay, then George, I guess, or Allie?
I'll start. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is George Maragos, and I have the privilege of serving as the chair of the Billings Tourism Business Improvement District Board. I'm joined by Allie Eggert, the Executive Director of Visit Billings. We're here to share an overview of our fiscal year 26 budget and highlight the strategic priorities that guide our work to promote Billings as a leading travel destination. Tourism continues to be a powerful driver of economic activity in our community, and with your continued support, we're eager to build on the progress we've made. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that we are celebrating National Travel and Tourism Week, May 4th through the 10th. A big thank you to all the people who directly and indirectly work in hospitality. On the front lines or behind the scenes, their tireless work taking care of the tourists who come and visit Billings deserves a big thank you. Their commitment is much appreciated. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Allie to walk you through our fiscal year 26 strategies.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Cole and members of the council. And I'm sorry I have a little bit of a raspy voice tonight, but I'll go through this pretty quick. If there's any slides that you want to revisit during the question and answer, happy to do so. So to start off, what is Visit Billings? Visit Billings is the destination leadership organization that represents the Billings Tourism Business Improvement District and the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and we're managed by the Billings Chamber of Commerce. And when we talk about what the mission of Visit Billings is, at the root of everything that we do, our mission is to generate room nights for lodging facilities in the city by effectively marketing the destination and the region as a premier travel destination. A quick look at who makes up our governing body, and for both the Tourism Business Improvement District and the Convention and Visitors Bureau. And then a quick peek at who our staff is. So you've got a full team now working really hard to make Billings a great travel destination. So to continue on, I want to take a moment to talk about what a DLO is and why it's important. When you talk about a destination leadership organization and the role that they have in the community, one of the leading things that we talk about is this destination tourism vitality wheel, the community vitality wheel. And it really stems from, if you build a place where people want to visit, you'll build a place where people want to live. If you build a place where people want to live, you'll build a place where people want to work. If you build a place where people want to work, you build a place that people want to invest in. And once you've built that place, you've built a place that, once again, people want to visit. And it all starts with a visit. And that visit doesn't happen without a destination leadership organization. So in Billings, the travel industry fuels every industry, and every industry also fuels the travel industry. So we always like to touch on some of the numbers that make an impact in Billings and in Montana. Tourism saves the average Montana household $930 a year in taxes, supports 1 in 12 Montana jobs, $1.5 billion in direct employee compensation, and supports about 44,000 jobs across the state of Montana. It's critical to Billings. And how do we invite people to Billings? How do we market? And when we talk about that, we do it in 3 ways. We inspire. Once we've inspired them to visit, we orientate them. Once we've orientated them, we facilitate them and help make their stay here as excellent as it can be so that they continue to come back again and again. So we'll get into our strategic priorities. These are the 6 items that really direct the ship for us day in and day out. And so these 6 items are what our roles, the different things that we do fall into. So it's increasing leisure visitation, the visitor experience, sports sales and support, recruiting, meeting and convention, and growing group travel, and of course, supporting air service. And then the next thing I wanted to just touch on quickly is our strategic plan. And most of you have received this, but if you haven't, please let me know. We're in the middle of a 3-year strategic plan that identified some things that we could do as a destination leadership organization that would help us moving forward. Some highlights there would be the sports tourism leadership, talking about a sports commission, research. We really need to understand who's visiting Billings, how many days are they spending, how much money they're spending in our community to really help us drill down on those numbers. And then, of course, this time next year, you guys will be looking at a new brand for Visit Billings, which is exciting. So I'm going to go through these slides relatively quick, but again, happy to answer any questions. Our leisure advertising, this is one of the biggest parts of our budget, and it's how we promote the destination to potential visitors. And we have a national fly market, a drive market, a 2-wheel market. We promote regional events, and then, of course, our public relations efforts. So this is a quick look at some of the places that we advertise. Obviously, the direct fly markets are really important to us. And then, of course, moving on to the visitor experience. If we don't do a good job hosting our visitors when they come to visit, they're likely not going to come back, or worse, they're going to tell their friends never to come visit Billings. And so it's important to us that we're training our frontline staff, that we're helping facilitate the visitors and find what they're looking for so that they have a great experience in Billings and continue to want to come back. Sports, of course, we're hearing a lot about this, and we're really pleased to announce that we've publicly shared that the Tourism Business Improvement District has committed to donate over $1 million over the next 3 years to help offset the operations of the Signal Peak Ice Arena. So that's really exciting news. We cannot wait to sell this new facility, and it'll be an important piece of our projects going forward. And then we've committed another $500,000 towards the Amen Sports Courts facility over the next 3 years as well to help get that off the ground and running. And then, of course, we're working on creating Billings' first sports commission. And then I'll look at some of the tactics that we do to increase sports sales and support. And again, I shared this a couple of weeks ago. We will attend national shows. We have a great team that's going to be working hard to fill those new venues. Meetings and convention, again, another really important segment for us. Those hotels being full means our restaurants are full, means our retailers are full, and meeting and convention really fill that midweek traffic for our community. Group sales, another, when you think about those big tour buses that you see parked downtown at a couple of our properties, including George's down here, that's really important business to us, and we're ensuring that we're continuing to grow that and invite those groups back over and over again. And then lastly, Miracle asked me to touch on this a little bit, our air service support. This is something that's been of great importance to the Tourism Business Improvement District, because the easier that you make it for visitors to get here, the more likely it is that they're going to come visit. But Miracle specifically asked me to kind of talk a little bit about Billings right now is the #2 most Googled flight search for domestic destinations. So people are getting online and Googling flights to Billings, and we're the #2 domestic donation or destination. And the reason for that is that we're really strategic with the way that we market. And so if you'll kind of look up there, we see those, we're calling out we have 3 new flights to fill to Chicago this summer, big task. And so we're spending a lot of time spending that direct flights to Billings now, that call to action. And we're seeing it pay off, and people are Googling how to fly to Billings. So then one more time, just a quick look at our strategic priorities, and then I'm gonna go right into the budget. So you'll see our budget breakdown. The bulk of our budget is going to sports this year. So we have over $1 million dedicated specifically to sports, whether that be supporting those new facilities or the sports sales components that will come to follow. Leisure advertising, again, continues to be a big piece of our pie, and ensuring that we're inviting those visitors that aren't just here for meeting and convention and sports, but for those leisure trips, because that benefits every single one of our hoteliers. And then it kind of breaks down from there. So at this point, I'll open it up to questions. I promise to be brief.
Very good. Thank you, Allie. Obviously, your efforts are having a positive result with employments up 13, 14% already. So questions for Allie or for George? And just to clarify, this will be an item that does require approval, your budget at a future business meeting. Chris or Kevin, is that on the agenda next week, do you know, or is it?
No, it'll come connected to the budget process. So
okay,
if you kind of rewind the clock, maybe I should have introduced it this way. Tonight was supposed to be the beginning of budget presentations, and these first 2 just made sense to leave in their place, even though probably we're going to be pushing many decisions. It made sense to cover tourism business improvement and the facilities, since that's been a hot topic of discussion. So we're really a little out of sync relative to what we'll be doing later through this summer, but ordinarily in the calendar, we would launch tonight. So that's why we just left it alone on the schedule.
Okay, very good. Questions, Councilor Boyette?
Thank you, Mayor. Can you tell me what you really think is going to happen when an ice skating rink and a 4-court or 6-court happens? What do you think is going to happen to Billings?
I mean, I think it's going to be incredible for year-round visitation. If you look at what January, February look like for our hoteliers and how slow it can feel, this will, no pun intended, be an absolute game changer for those hoteliers. But also for our restaurateurs. When you talk to any of our restaurants, those same months are extremely slow for them. They rely heavily on our tourism dollars and on our visitors to come spend money in their destination. So I think what you will see is a lot more families visiting during what we call those shoulder season months, right? We know in summer we're a great travel destination, fall, but winter and spring can be a little harder. And so I think that what we will see is a more well-rounded, diverse tourism economy for the city of Billings.
Very good. Councilmember Denise?
Thank you, Mayor. And you know, it is nice to hear that the board approved, extending 3 years assistance to these sports facilities. My concern is what after 3 years, if it's still not net, is the board open to looking at additional funding?
Yes, absolutely. The asks were for the first 3 years because both facilities hope to be, operating in the black by the time they get to year 3. But should they need additional assistance, we're open to that. I would also note that our assistance isn't just going to be in the form of operational support. When you think about major tournaments and major events, sometimes they come with bid fees and needing help, hosting the tournament directors to plan and facilitate. That will be ongoing for probably their entire lifespan, that our organization would support that.
Okay. And you mentioned how this is going to be a game changer for the shoulder seasons. Are you expecting then the ice rink and the courts to actually start hosting additional tournaments and bringing those in? Is that what you're expecting to happen?
Yes, absolutely. Obviously, with ice, this is a whole untapped market for us right now, having 2 sheets of ice and really respectively 3 now, with Centennial still being available for practices and things like that for a time. There's just a completely different level of tournaments that we've never even been able to entertain hosting. And then same with sport courts. If you look at last weekend, 300 teams were visiting Billings for Big Sky Volley Fest spread across 41 courts. They're out of space to grow. So you'll have some existing events that will benefit from growing their events. But then, yes, we will certainly have the opportunity to go after, way more basketball tournaments. And it's not just the typical court sports that you think of. We envision pickleball, things like that. So just a wide range of opportunities for us to sell sports-wise.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? I'll just comment, Ally mentioned Big Sky Volley Fest. I had the privilege of stopping by the Metro there and seeing a portion. There was only 14 courts of 41 all around the city, 295 teams. That's not players, teams. Plus, and those are just the players. So add on that a couple parents, siblings. You couldn't get a room here. You heard earlier comments about Magic City soccer tournament. These are worth millions and millions of dollars to our local economy. Unfortunately, this is just a personal comment. I don't think things always work as well when government's incentives are not lined up with the public sector's incentives. It's better when they can row in the same direction. And unfortunately, without a local option sales tax or any way to directly benefit, we can't help those organizations very well. So Volley Fest, for example, spends tens of thousands of dollars to bring in courts from all over the country that maybe we could afford to split the cost of that and actually buy those. And that's just one example, but we're not there yet. So anyway, just an observation. If there aren't any other questions, we'll move on to public comment on this item. I don't see any others. So if there is anybody who would like to comment on item number 1, this is your opportunity for public comment on the Tourism Business Improvement District report. Is there any public comment on item number 1? Any public comment? Seeing none, we will go ahead and close then the public comment period. Council, if there's nothing further from you, we'll move on to item number 2. Thank you all. Item number 2, our facilities fiscal year 26 budget and custodial discussion. I believe Kevin and John are going to lead this one off. So Kevin, right. Do you have anything before it gets turned over to John?
Mayor, I'll just, as John's getting set up, just a reminder, the motion that was made several weeks back really had 2 main components to it. You wanted to review all maintenance expenditures tied to the facilities budget. So again, originally, this was the night that we were going to begin presenting the overall general fund budget. So it just made sense to us to leave this in place. No better way to understand the context of maintenance than to understand the full facilities budget. So if you feel that's a little out of place, that's what it just seemed to staff to leave it alone. Then second, so you wanted to look at the total maintenance, and then we need direction on, we've got that custodial contract. So no action can be taken on that tonight, but the motion that was passed several weeks ago was that it be put on a work session. This is that work session, so that contract can either be, we can let the folks know where we're going with that. So those are the 2 things we need this evening. I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to present the Facilities Division fiscal year 26 budget. So I wanted to provide an overview first of what it is that we do, the services that we provide. I have it broken down between administrative services and then building services. This is not an exhaustive list, but it is a snapshot of some of the services that we provide to all the tenants in the locations that we manage as a landlord, but also to other divisions and departments that we serve. So some of those items under administrative services include vendor and contract management, which is considered contract administration. We have real estate services, so commercial lease administration, think Park One Retail, purchase and disposal of property. We do budgeting, which includes OpEx and capital, in addition to cost controls to make sure we're not overrunning on the budget that we do have approval to spend. Regulatory compliance, which would be your annual system testing, elevators, boilers,
life safety systems, and then various types of different planning. On the building services side, we provide construction services, so we act as the owner's rep. Facilities division was the owner's rep for this project, so not only the purchase of the land and the property, but the 2-year build out that came after the purchase. We do bidding and permitting. We do asset management. So one of our big initiatives is stewardship of the assets that we do manage. And then a lot of the core services that we do provide fall within the bucket of operations and maintenance. Typically it's called O&M. So various types of repairs, preventative and emergency. We've got ADA and accessibility code compliance. We want to make sure that our buildings are compliant with federal, state, and local codes. And then additionally, we have those other services such as landscaping, access control, thermal comfort. On a very high level or macro level, we manage assets. We purchase them, we dispose of them, we construct them, we remodel them, we maintain them. Here's the locations where we do it. So we provide hard and or soft services at approximately 1 million square feet, 47 acres, and an insured value of 152 million. So the delineation between hard and soft services is that hard is the focusing on the physical elements of the building, such as infrastructure, and soft services are those items that enhance the user experience. So think custodial, security, and landscaping. Most of what we provide is a hard service, as you can see from the breakdown of the locations that we serve. And then we have soft service deliverability at City Hall and the Billings Operations Center. Here is an outline of our existing org chart. So I just want to make it clear that there's one division manager, there's one supervisor, everybody in the division reports to me. We have a lead maintenance technician who has lead responsibilities, but is not a supervisor. So doesn't supervise staff, doesn't approve time cards, doesn't discipline. All of that runs through me. We do have a facility specialist that is a non-bargaining position. So in the event that I'm absent, she is the liaison between administration and the rest of the division. We've always been building the fiscal 26 budget off of increasing our FTEs. So the ask that we had was to increase our facility maintenance support 1 staff so that we could effectively service this building, but then also have a dedicated supervisor for all the bargaining staff. So this is what that proposed org chart would look like. In the event that we don't move forward with that proposed budget, here is what outsourcing of custodial services looks like in relation to our organizational chart. So the contract management of custodial vendors would be over my jurisdiction. So think contract administration. And then additionally, all the rest of the FTEs under the division would report to me. So the methodology for our charges is that our beginning cash, what we have, minus our budgeted expenses, which is operations and maintenance, our capital costs, and our personnel charges, plus our budgeted revenues, that's what we charge for rents to all our tenants, is our end cash and future capital projects balance. So we try to charge a little more than our operational costs so that we can start to hit this backlog of deferred maintenance, but also our capital projects that we know are coming. So what's changed from fiscal year 25 to 26 is that on a conservative level, we have about 12 million in capital projects over the next 5 years. That's very conservative. We have more projects that we need to tackle, but we're doing our best to prioritize and ensure that we're not overrunning with either our tenant charges or having to do some sort of debt financing to support all of this infrastructure upgrade. We're seeing increased operations and maintenance costs for a fully occupied and larger city hall facility. So we could certainly reduce charges to our tenants if we secure leases for the first and third floor, which has been very difficult for us to manage. We're having a hard time because we can't provide the same sort of subsidies that private companies can offer. And then we're just seeing increased contractor personnel charges for our expanded portfolio. We're taking on more space, which means we have to charge more to maintain all those services. So the current proposed fiscal year 26 budget will add approximately $378,000 across our portfolio for increased personnel charges and capital projects, which is very much a shortfall from the 12 million, like I said, conservative number for these projects that need to be completed by fiscal year 29. And just to reiterate, the proposed budget accounts for 3 new FTEs. Here's a snapshot of our capital projects through fiscal year 30. We do have a lot of capital needs at this building, which we knew going in when we purchased it. We're doing our best to maintain those infrastructure items as best we can and defer that capital replacement. The fiscal year 26 charges are already accounted for in our budget. So the evidence lot expansion design services and then our fire alarm control panel replacement at BOC, we already have budgeted for next year. We currently have nothing slotted for fiscal year 30, but we do anticipate a full roof replacement at BOC at approximately $3 million. We don't have any clarity on Yellowstone Valley Animal Shelter facility, so we're trying our best to maintain what we have without putting too much capital expenditures into it, knowing that in the future it could potentially go dark. And then also, we're not accounting for any leasehold improvements at City Hall for the first or third floor. So assuming that we do secure tenants, we have to find money to build that out. So we have our proposed budget options for fiscal year 26. As I said, the proposed budget includes 3 new FTEs. So assuming that goes forward, at the end of the year, our cash accumulation is $222,000. So that's what we put in our reserve accounts for future capital projects. If we move forward with the contracted services options, that gives us more cash reserves at approximately $442,000. All these numbers are coming from our finance division that worked diligently to help us work through this and crunch numbers to make sure we were being accurate. So a reduction in proposed expenses for implementing custodial services is approximately $219,000 for the fiscal year. And this projection only accounts for 1/2 year of tenant charges from Yellowstone County. So they've signed a month-to-month lease extension to the end of this calendar year. So after that, we will see a decrease in the revenue collected by not having a tenant on the 3rd floor. I also wanted to highlight some of our recent accomplishments because some of our stuff can get lost in the shuffle. Division accomplishments over the past 5 fiscal years. We've either managed or assisted with $55 million in capital projects. So the new City Hall facility we built out and we also maintain. So from the second you guys walk into the door on the 1st floor lobby till you get up here at council chambers, we maintain the building, all the infrastructure, all the FF&E included within. The 2019 hail claim project, which was about $3.5 million, repairs across various city facilities. $500,000 in parking garage repairs for this year, the elevator modernization at this location, and then access control upgrade across multiple facilities, including BOC, animal shelter, 8 fire stations in this location. Approximately $3 million in design contracts. So this building, fire station 8 remodel, parking garage repairs, and $18 million in real estate transactions. So the sale of City Hall and Park 3, the 2 surface lots on 27th, and Park 1 retail space. And then the purchase of this building, 20 acres at BOC and Fire Station 8. Also, we've successfully completed the build out City Hall and we've transitioned to occupancy and warranty phase and the same for Fire Station 8. So discussion items that I have. Our own end costs are estimates. We won't know until we have a full year of how accurate they are. We're projecting off industry standards and what we think it's going to cost to maintain this facility. Constantly talking about deferred maintenance every budget cycle. If we realize savings by outsourcing custodial, we can either pass those savings on to our tenants, which is going to be crucial with the budget cuts that are coming through, or we can have those same revenues coming in, and then we have more resources for repairs and maintenance and capital projects. Some of the decisions that could have downstream impacts is that if we increase FTEs, departments pay more, which means we have less funds available for those capital and preventative maintenance items. Additionally, we didn't manage the Miller Building or depot tenants in the past. Now we do at City Hall. So we're seeing costs associated with providing services to those tenants and more increased space accordingly in this facility, so those charges are going up. One question we do have is, does facilities dedicate more resources to securing new tenants in this facility? We're working diligently with our broker to secure tenants, but like I said, it's difficult to compete with private landlords that can absorb build-out costs. We don't have dedicated funds set aside to pay $120, $130, $140 a square foot to build out our shell spaces. And then additionally is, do we move forward with custodial contracts on the next business meeting agenda? Or do we move forward with the proposed 26 budget, which adds additional FTEs? Some of the pros and cons of outsourcing custodial benefits is we see a cost savings. We can focus our core business, which is facilities management. Vendors have better control over staffing flexibility. They have more access to specialized knowledge. We reduce the liability by transferring that over to a vendor. We can see increased productivity not only in the vendor contract, but also in our staff. Historically, we've had to overstaff to ensure coverage. We have people that have been here for a long time that have a lot of vacation accruals used up. We have sick time. So we have to overstaff to ensure that we can provide that minimum level of coverage. So I have to use my dedicated skilled maintenance staff to cover custodial tasks. And then additionally, if we're not hiring and training, that's more time freed up for us to do other tasks. Some of the drawbacks include contractor could terminate their services, which would mean we have to rebid the work. Prevailing wage rates could outpace the city wages over the next 5 years. We can't anticipate what those fluctuations look like. And then potential communication issues. The major takeaway for the custodial outsource discussion is that we're saving money to provide the same level of service at a minimum. No employees are being laid off, which is really important. And then we can focus more resources through this stewardship of assets, which is one of our core values. And then again, I know everybody's seen the numbers, but here's the cost analysis for the custodial outsourcing, assuming all things equal, savings by outsourcing over the 5-year term of the contract, which is on the bottom right, could be $705,000. With that, I will turn it over to Mayor and Council for any questions that they have.
Very good. We'll have questions and then we'll open it for public comment. And then we'll come back for general discussion by the council. At this point, though, are there especially factual questions for John or anybody else? Councilmember Gulick.
Yes, thanks, John, for putting this together. Going back to the organizational chart or staffing, how do you, when you are doing projects for deferred maintenance, if I say fire station, who's doing the project management of planning for a project, for coordinating with our architect and engineering team, bidding and managing the contract?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Gulick, Mayor and Council. So all of that responsibility falls under Facilities Division, the manager, which is me, and then our facility specialists. So from the planning stages, working with fire administration through project closeout, warranty phase, that's the Facilities Division. So all of those services that we do provide are included in the cost to our tenants. So we're not on a cost per service basis.
Okay, so you and the facilities specialist.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Shaw?
Thank you, John. This is really great and helpful. You mentioned wanting direction on if there should be resources dedicated for the tenant build outs. Where would that money come from?
Mayor and Council, I'll turn that over to Chris or Kevin because that's the question that I ask them every time we have this discussion.
So Councilmember Shaw, I mean, great question. And I mean, just take the first floor retail space. It costs, our first estimates cost about $800,000 to build that up for a retail space to be down there. And a lot of times what a business owner would do is they would front some of that money. They'd get it back in the leases, lease rates and things of that nature. But we don't have $800,000. So that's the golden question. Where would we get it from? That is a hindrance to us when we go to try to lease out some of these spaces, especially to small businesses out there. So I don't have a funding source at this point. That's why we're still looking.
Councilor Rupsis?
Thank you, Mayor. John, I have a question. I think I heard earlier that we're already paying Pride of Montana to do maintenance services here or janitorial services in this building, 5th floor and all the bathrooms. So we're not really adding, where does the current cost of that service factor in the cost benefit analysis here? Because we're not, if you were saying you wanted to add staff to do this, sorry, we're not, there's some offset there, right? So we're not realizing those whole savings by outsourcing. We're just outsourcing an extra chunk. Maybe I'm not making myself clearly. You don't have your current cost of maintaining this building in this analysis, do you?
Mayor and Council, Councilmember Rupsis. So the way that we've accounted for it is we knew that we would have to augment custodial services with a vendor for roughly half a fiscal year. So we built those charges into our budgeted revenues, knowing that we didn't have commensurate FTEs to service this building appropriately. So with the costs of an dedicated FTE, that's a city employee, versus the costs that we're paying for the custodial services to be augmented by a vendor is very minimal. We're paying about $5,000 a month for all the services that Tom had outlined.
Okay, so that $5,000 a month for what they're currently doing here. So that actually would come off the cost of the extra FTEs minus that $5,000 a month, which would be a small part of that.
Correct.
It's not a significant change there. But if we're really looking at the change, we probably have to account for an extra $60,000 a year is to be net.
That sounds about accurate.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Deans.
Thank you, Mayor. Jen, would you mind going to the cost analysis page for a minute? Because Thomas asking some questions similar to what I was thinking about, because when we talk about year one on the cost versus, are we talking, that's what you're currently doing now, including paying the vendor on that, or is that 60,000 more, 5,000 a month, or 5,000 a month? Is that 60,000 more is what that number is, or does that include that vendor already?
Yeah, Mayor and Council. So the in-house current costs is just for city personnel. So that's not including the costs of any vendors.
Okay, so we're really spending another 60,000, so 420,000 is what we're currently doing. And you're saying outsourcing is going to drop it to 343?
Correct.
Okay, so when we get down to the bottom, we look at the difference total between in-house current of $1,916,000 versus $1,826,000. That you didn't account for the fact that you're paying $60,000 a year more every single one of those years. So you're now looking at another 300,000?
Mayor and Council, yes,
5-year period.
that is correct. So these were very conservative numbers that we were using. We were just accounting for facilities in-house staff and not taking into account any of that.
Yeah.
Directed labor.
If I could just make a clarification with that. So our current budget is built on not having any contracted custodial services here. It would be just additional FTE, so all in-house.
Okay, so it wouldn't be another 60,000 on the in here. Okay. All right. So how much is it now that how much are we doing now? That's what I'd like to know. I mean, how much are we spending annually now with the contracts you're doing now with the current in-house?
I think possibly the way to look at this is this. A year ago, we were not in this building. But we knew we had a bridge that we were going to be moving into the building mid-year. And so the bridge till the next fiscal year was augmented with contracted services. But the decision was gonna be made in the proposed budget, either to add additional staff in order to meet the standard to maintain this building, or contract services out, not continue with both
No,
on the custodial side.
Yeah, I understand that. So you're, right now, the facility is being maintained well, correct? Or adequately? Do I understand that correctly with what you currently have in employees and the contract that you have right now?
Mayor and council, yes, that is accurate. Obviously, we
Okay,
could,
based upon what we're doing now,
Yes.
the cost of those employees and the cost of the contracts, how much is that on an annual basis? Is that 360? Is it less than 360? Is it more than 360? What does that cost what the city is spending now?
Mayor and council, so the cost for next fiscal year, year one, 360,000 is for all of our facility maintenance support one positions over the portfolio that we provide soft services at. So City Hall and BOC.
That's for next year. What are we doing this year?
Oh, minus, I don't know.
And John, is it possible to bring up a slide that shows it just so we can follow along?
I'm sorry, Mayor, can you repeat that?
Do you have a slide that shows that? Because numbers kind of come in one year and go out the other. We can't see them. Are these numbers in your cost analysis, maintenance at City Hall slide?
If I'm understanding correctly, Mayor, are you asking for the attachment that has been on the staff memos in the past? That have
No, I was
those?
just, if what you just went through helps answer Councilmember Neese's question.
Yeah, I think it's a very simple question. What is it costing right now this year? Not what we're talking about budget-wise. What is it costing right now to pay your current custodial staff and the contracts
For City Hall?
for City Hall? And if you don't know on an annual basis, how much per month, we'll multiply by 12 and get the number what it's costing per year.
Mayor and council, we can get those numbers.
Thank you.
So John, I'm just going to follow up with that. I'm looking at that, the slide that's cost analysis, maintenance at City Hall. Is it not the $800,000 number?
The slide, Mayor?
Yeah, exactly. In that first column?
Yes, so was this something that you wanted to tee up, Kevin, since we're on the slide? Yeah.
Oh, because that includes maintenance, which is different from custodial. Is that, okay, sorry, okay. Okay. I answered my own question. There you go. Councilmember Kennedy?
I want to talk about maintenance. You've showed everything of why we should do janitorial. I just want to bring one thing up. I had asked about this last year during the budget time. We have it handled. So I thought that was, we should have talked about it last year going into this year. That's, I want to talk about maintenance. When you're looking at your numbers, as we look at your cost, custodial numbers, you have your maintenance personnel costs, in-house current. Are you talking about your facilities manager, your facilities specialist, your lead facilities maintenance tech, and your 3 facility maintenance support too?
Mayor and council, Councilmember Kennedy, the maintenance personnel charges are strictly the lead maintenance tech and then also the facility maintenance support 2 positions.
Where are the facility specialists and the facilities manager in here?
So facilities management is under facilities management, and then facility specialist is paid for by fire department.
But it should be in here because don't you bill it out to the fire department?
Yes, we do.
Okay, because that's not correct then, because we should be able to see the whole thing. Because I want to compare apples to apples, not apples to oranges. And the biggest thing is you have an awful lot of, if you have 185,000 for facilities management and 208 for maintenance and personnel, and you're not even talking about the facility specialists, you're talking about 1, 2, and 5 positions that you're at 3, almost 450,000. Plus you have the facility specialist. I would really like to compare apples with apples and be able to look at an RFP to go out for maintenance services and for a company to look at that, come back and see what they can do. I did a little research, folks, and I did go to a company and asked exactly where they were at with their 8-floor building. And what they were looking at is 2 building superintendents, $28 an hour, 3 weeks vacation. And they do the snow removal and everything else, the plumbing, the electrical, and all of that. Because they have the background, electrical, plumbing, all of that. Very little is contracted out. And it doesn't come up to a budget like this and this amount of personnel. So really what I'm trying to get at is, as I have said over and over, we're only looking at one small piece, the janitorial contracts. I think we need to go out and we need to do an RFP for the whole maintenance to go out and see what our numbers are. Because that's where I think you will see that there will be a cost savings, especially on your running of it and your personnel and all of that. The other piece is it does not cut down on, in these numbers, as I looked at last year, we allocated 3.428 million. If we go back and we have facilities manager, facilities specialist, lead facilities maintenance, facility maintenance support, only one of these lead facilities maintenance person is actually doing maintenance, but the majority of stuff we contract out. So to really be able to compare apples to apples, just like we're doing with the janitorial, I would really appreciate if the board would say, let's go out for an RFP and let's try to have this settled that an RFP could be issued by July 1. I really think that's the way we need to go. It's a tight budget. It's going to get tighter. And I think we have to look at every dollar along the way.
Okay, Councilmember Gulick.
I think we really need to write what Bill is, Councilmember Kennedy is proposing out. I don't think we're talking about apples to apples at all. I mean, I think we're talking about, we're talking about a whole division of who makes the decisions and how we prioritize things. That's not what you're talking about when you're talking about contracting out to an entity there. I think we're not talking about apples to apples, I think, in terms of what you're proposing. But it'd be helpful if we were to be really clear what we're doing here. But I really don't think that's what we're doing, what you're talking about.
Okay, go ahead.
Councilmember Gulick, I think the one thing that we need to look at is we have a gentleman right next to me that's our assistant city administrator. It has his name as the administration on it. And we do the majority of our work, contract work, through the finance department. As you're talking about administration in the city, and you're talking about where we're going to have to make some cuts, and those are going to be hard decisions, we're going to have to look at some areas that we may have middle management today, but we're probably going to have to go back out and look at some of those positions and eliminate them. The one thing about it is you can eliminate the lowest paid employees throughout the whole thing. You're not going to make up the $1 or $2 million that you're going to have a shortfall in this budget year and future years coming up. So What I'm looking at is we look at a whole new way to run the city and not do the same old, same old. So we're going to eliminate some of this. And if you contract out, the place is going to be clean, the maintenance is going to be done, the toilets are going to be plunged, whatever needs to be done. And it can be done by an outside company contracting out.
Okay, we're still in question stages. Councilmember Ripsis, Councilmember Neese, and we'll try to get to public comment pretty soon.
Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, and I'm sorry. And Kevin, can we, Councilmember Ripsis, can we go to Kevin first? Go ahead, Kevin.
So Mayor and Council, I did want to just clarify, in anticipation of tonight, we did meet with a vendor to look at maintenance and what maybe those charges would be for City Hall only. Just like we did with the custodial, before we went out to an RFP, we went out there and kind of got an idea, what do we think these costs would be? Does it even seem feasible to then go to the RFP stage? So we did that with the maintenance side. That's what you're seeing on the screen here, if we haven't been clear, is we went to a vendor, and these are when under the outsource column, that's kind of what they told us that they would charge to come in for a building like this. So I just want to make that clear that we've went down this road of at least starting to look at that. I wouldn't recommend that we go down that road because it doesn't seem to be beneficial at this point.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Although it sounds like maybe the Councilmember Kennedy has done his own little research, but doesn't sound like anybody has gotten into it too deep.
Yeah, and the cost of the lead facilities specialist for the fire station was not put in there because we did just look at City Hall, and she's not doing projects up here at City Hall. So that's why it's not included in those costs.
Okay, Councilor Ripsis?
Thank you, Mayor. If we could return to the actual topic at hand, which is the custodial services. John, last week we heard from somebody who came and said that we're not going to get the same type of support from an outsourced vendor that you would have from your internal team. You spend a lot of time supervising them as they go through sensitive areas and whatnot. Can you talk about that? Can you tell us how we control those types of things, and how we know that our service levels will stay at or above where we are right now?
Yeah, Mayor and Councilmember Rupsis, thank you for the question. That's why you do an RFP, so you can select the most qualified vendor to provide services. And we had a pretty robust scope of work, which was outlined in the RFP, and those are not the level of services that we're currently providing. So the vendors came in and said, yes, we can commit to providing this level of service, which includes more tasks than we're currently providing with our staffing level, and also more frequency of those tasks. We went through, we reviewed it, went through and reviewed the key performance indicators and the measuring metrics that these companies use to ensure that they're performing to the contract standards. So it's not just a verbal commitment that says, yes, we will provide these services. They actually have controls in place to say, here's the nightly checklist that the supervisor has to ensure that the staff is coming in and doing their work. Here's the monthly meetings that we have. Here's our quarterly reviews. Additionally, there's been some comments about potential criminals cleaning our police facilities, which is inaccurate. That is not a true statement. All of the vendors have to do, they do federal background checks, and then also we require CGN certification, so they have to go through the police fingerprinting process, and then they have to do the CGN training requirements. So we're making sure that we have these controls in place to ensure that we're getting a quality product, but also ensuring that our facilities stay safe.
Thank you, Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Owen, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Chris, a couple of questions for you, because during public testimony, we heard a couple of things I just wanted to clarify with you. Is we heard about some Teamster jobs maybe going away. Can you, and then we also heard that there's no jobs lost. Can you explain who we have now in the facility who are Teamsters, and then where they would go so they're not losing their job?
So recognize that the last time, thank you, Councilmember Neese. Last time I commented, recognizing we were going to be sitting down at the table with the Teamsters, and we did do that. And we did arrive at an impasse through the formal process. Specific to answer your question, I don't think it would be appropriate. I don't think I would need Kevin's help here, and I don't know that we want to get into what the negotiations were of the last Teamster contract. I will tell you this, though, the positions are proposed in this building to go to a private contractor. The individuals who work for us, we've offered them positions at other facilities, so the individuals aren't out of work. Why does that matters to us for a couple reasons? Number one, it's the right thing to do by them as people. Secondly, it lowers our risk considerably as the Teamsters and city continue this, ultimately may end up at arbitration with one another as to, under a worst case scenario, if we were to lose that, one of the financial concerns would be loss of job, back pay, things of that nature. That is not the case in this case because we've given those individuals other work. So they are remaining with the city as individuals, but the work itself in this building for the contractor work would go to the private contract. Does that answer your question?
It does. Just to clarify, are these going to be like positions that they're doing now, or are they actually changing?
I have Kevin
positions? Do
help.
we know?
So the positions we're talking about are FM1 position, facilities maintenance ones, and there's a band of those across the city. We've got some up at the airport. We've got them at other city locations, so they'd stay in that exact same job description, just a different location in the city.
Different, same thing, different location.
Correct.
Basically. Okay. And then Chris, if you don't mind, it's been said before, and I just want to clarify, and I read through the contract and I believe it's correct, is these are 30-day contracts. Again, we heard that in public testimony from the vendor saying that he's been doing it for many, many years on a 30-day contract. And so at any time, this is not a 30-day to cancel. This is a 30-day, whether it's 2 years from now or 6 months from now, we can cancel at any time. Is that correct, with no penalty?
Correct. So that was changed upon our request. Originally, what they proposed, or our original contract would have had it locked in for 3 years with some escalators, things of that nature. When this question came up and when we needed to work at the bargaining table, we did ask the vendors if they would accept a change to that to be 30 days notice. Either side can get out of this contract with 30-day notice.
Okay. Thank you
Tom's
very much.
assured us he has no intention. He's got 4 decades of doing work downtown here. I didn't know until this evening, according to him, that's how he works in some of his other buildings. So I've asked him point blank, is that what you anticipate doing? And the answer has been no. He's looking forward to continuing this work here at a high level service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rowan.
Thank you, Mayor. Kevin, can you tell me, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying about this chart that's up on the screen here. That outsourcing estimate is based on a single vendor conversation? Is that what I heard you say?
Correct, Councilmember Owen. Just like we did with custodial, before we went out for an RFP, we just wanted to find out what's the ballpark.
Do we have a sense of how many businesses, vendors, providers in the vicinity offer both custodial and maintenance?
I'll probably have to defer to John. He's more daily on that.
Mayor and Councilmember Owen, I don't have an answer for that.
Okay. So I think that is why they're connected. I think I am uncertain if there's a greater efficiency to be gained by bidding the whole thing out, custodial and maintenance together, doing a larger volume, a different scope of work. I think Councilmember Kennedy's right. We have really tough choices ahead of us, no matter how we proceed here. And I think it's important to the public that we look at all of our options a little more thoroughly. And I don't feel like we've really explored the ability of larger sort of facility management type relationship that includes custodial and maintenance together. So I'm inclined to agree that we're never going to know everything before making a decision, but this is one where I'm not convinced that a single quote on just maintenance is an accurate sort of comparison for us to make a decision on.
Okay, any other comments from council or questions before we go to public comment? Chris?
I'd just say, as to the question of going out for an RFP for more services, I think it's a perfectly worthwhile conversation for this board to have at the appropriate time and prioritize where it fits into the scale of the list of things that you want us to focus on. We knew moving into the building, the custodial services, what I understand is there is a separation there. So it made sense to us to go out, see if the market would be less expensive, and as we point out here, save us these dollars. So I don't want you to walk away from this discussion thinking because we contacted one entity that we're saying that's not a worthwhile discussion overall, but I don't think it should derail the custodial contract. And I think I'd ask you to look at the list of things you've got on our plate that you want us to focus on and simply say where you want that in the prioritization list if you want us to look at privatizing this whole division. Kevin and I essentially entered into our roles 6.5 years ago, where it was one manager and custodians and most everything contracted out. And I think the proof was in the facilities. They were not in good condition, and we are still digging out of that hole. So generally speaking, I'm going to say that we inherited that type of a system. Not that it can't work, but it didn't in the past for us. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Let's go to public comment, and then council will come back to you. We are going to need some clearer direction. That's going to require some sort of a vote, some sort of direction to staff. Just a reminder from the staff report, what the staff is asking for is, here I'm quoting the staff report, the only action needed by city council is to provide direction to staff if custodial contracts should be on the next business meeting, or I suppose a future business meeting. So that's the immediate question before us, or at least that staff would like direction on. This is an opportunity for public comment. You've heard the conversation here and the presentations. If anybody would like to comment now on this item, number 2, the facilities 26 budget and the custodial discussion, this is your opportunity. Is there any public comment on this item number 2? If so, make a little line behind the podium there. And as just as others, if you just tell us your name and address and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is my first time being here, so if I get you confused between you and the legislature, that's my fault. My name is Don Cape. I am here in my individual capacity, and I live on 1106 Patriot Street in Billings. Listening to this conversation, this wasn't a section I was going to comment on, but listening to it, I'm quite frankly, I want to scratch my head. I didn't want to take off my cheap toupee, which I call my hat. This should be done in an RFP. And looking at the information which is given you, you don't have enough information to make a rational opinion. If we were a business meeting here, there would be a lot of comments as to, I need more information. Where's the proposals? Where's the bids? Where's the cost savings? Where's the material coming from? Rather than let's do this piecemeal. We've heard about the budget shortfall. That is where my comments will come from. This is one great area where you can save some money. I'm just sitting here scratching my head why we haven't had a multiple RFP on this. There are companies out there that do this kind of work. There are companies out there that will relieve you from liability. If they break something, they fix it. If they repair something, they fix it. When it's a city employee, you're on the hook for everything. You're on the hook for health, medical, everything else, unemployment, workers' comp, the whole 9 yards. You bid it out. It's their problem. That lowers your liability. That lowers your fiscal problem. So I would ask you as a taxpayer to do the primary job. You're elected to be good stewards of the money we give you. We elect you to herd the sheep in the right direction. And right now, I see multiple herds of sheep heading off to the county, and they've ran past the fences, and we're only concentrating on this one little bunch over here, and we don't know where the rest of them went. So I would ask you to take that suggestion and get multiple RFPs. Let's see where we can save some money. And as a taxpayer, I would thank you doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item number 2, facilities 26 budget and custodial discussion?
My name is Pat Kitson, 3923 2nd Avenue South. I've worked for this city. I worked for John. And I understand that you're trying to save money. We all get that. But you're not comparing apples to apples when you're looking at those janitor positions that you're getting rid of. BOC can't be cleaned by one person in an 8-hour day. You know that, John. We have 2.5 full-time positions there now. And there's no way anybody's going to go look outside. You know how much mud that they drag in from the landfill? You've got streets department there that's bringing that mud in. You've got the motor pool there that's dirty boots and crap. You've got parks that bring all that into that building. And you get rainy days, snowy days, you can't clean it with 8 people. He's got it down to where if he has to run it, you need 3 full-time positions down there. But this super company that's going to come in and clean it can do it in 4 hours at night just simply because there's nobody there. I've worked in that building. I've cleaned those areas and it can't be done. I can clean that during the day because, hey, go figure. The employees are out earning money and doing work for the city. They're not there during the day. The only people that are there during the day are supervisors. So you're trying to tell me that if they clean it at night, it's going to be faster? It's not. Because when I cleaned those bathrooms, when I was down there, we never had any of that problem. There was never anybody there during the day. So we went right through there and we cleaned it. Also, when you say that we've offered all those employees positions within the city, they haven't. My son is one of those positions that's going to be cut, and he hasn't been offered anything. Nobody's talked to him, nothing. And when it comes to having these guys clean those, and they say, oh, I heard that there's criminals working there. Well, I can tell you, when I first started there, I took over after ECI was doing it, and they were cleaning the police bar. And that place was a filthy mess. And I had plenty of cops tell me that the people that were working there, they arrested. So those people can pass a background check, they put in jail. I don't know how this happened. How are we doing this? If you're going to compare apples to apples, damn it, do it apples to apples. You should be charging the same staff level as you currently have, not some imaginary, they're coming in here with a low bid to get in the door. Look at what 3 people then, when they start doing it in 2 years and that's what you're paying, see how much that's going to cost you. Because that's what you're going to be staring down in 2-3 years. Not this, you know. It's just frustrating to see. So, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Other comments, go ahead. Tom, since you commented before, I'm going to ask you to stick to, if you've got, since you're a direct stake in here, don't repeat anything you said, but if you wanted to respond specifically to something new,
Yes.
We'll allow that.
I don't hire criminals. I have employees that have background checks to clean the FBI, the ATF. We clean the Department of Interior building down there. You know what it takes to get GSI background checks, clean buildings like that? I don't hire criminals. As far as the quality of work we do, I assure you, it's going to be higher than what you've got in your city buildings now. You don't clean a building like the Wells Fargo Tower for 48 years without doing things right. The city employees deserve, the taxpayers deserve to have this building cleaned properly and maintained properly, so we don't end up with another situation like Dealer Park, which is totally gone to hell.
Very good, thank you. Any other public comment on, Pat, we're just gonna have to, we're not gonna go do the back and forth. If you want to send us an email though, go ahead.
Well, I mean,
was there a specific issue of fact that you're disagreeing with?
You're talking a guy who does this and makes money off it. I would be saying the same thing if this.
Sure, no, we understand. Okay, thank you. Any other public comment though on item number 2? Any other public comment on item number 2 before we close the public comment period? Nope, okay. We'll close the public comment period. Back to Councilmember Neese.
Chris, just to clarify, or Kevin, I'll ask you this. I think these, the contracts for the custodial did have RFPs presented quite a while ago, I believe. And how many respondents did you have?
Yeah, thanks, Councilmember Neese. Yes, this was an official RFP process. I believe we got 6 respondents to these. So we did review those, had a committee that reviewed them just like with any other RFP, and these 2 companies were selected.
And thank you. And Kevin and John or anybody else from staff, you heard some specific allegations about the lack of an offer to an existing city employee. That's inconsistent with what we were hearing before. Also that we're limited to 4 hours, lots of mud, all those issues. Is there anything you wanted to respond to specifically?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I would defer to Carla about the comments about having conversations with staff.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to report to you that when we did meet with the Teamsters in negotiations, sorry, you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. When we met, as City Administrator Kukulski said, with the Teamsters, and we reached an impasse, we did provide at that time all the shifts that were available in the different locations. If they didn't share that, I guess they should have. Because right now, of those 4 people that we had that would be impacted, 2 of them have since resigned, so we're now down to 2. And we were willing to take up to 4 positions in other departments, so these people would not lose their positions, their jobs. They may have a different schedule than they have now, but I do know that if we keep the same arrangement that we have and stay with the employees, which is fine if that's what you choose to do, but they will move to a different schedule as well. We really need to clean the building when there's less people in the building. But the union was made aware of shifts that were available and times and days of work.
Okay, so Carla, just to clarify, your communications were directly with the union, not with those employees per se. So
Right.
you're dependent upon whatever was communicated from the Teamsters.
But I did have a conversation with one of these employees in an unrelated meeting. And I mentioned to them at that time, and their union representative was with them as well, but I mentioned it to him at that time that they will not lose their position. We will have work for them to do.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else, John?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, to go back to your question about the mud situation. So we have 4 hours dedicated for day porting at BOC. So between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., we'd have a day porter on site cleaning the facilities. And then additionally, we have the rest of the staff coming in at night to take care of all of those items that were not done during the day. I had something else, but lost my train of thought.
Okay, so it sounds like it's not just a purely nighttime cleaning effort.
Correct. So both City Hall and BOC would have day porters during working hours to help maintain those high traffic areas.
Okay, because obviously that's important. Thank you very much. Councilmember Neese?
Yeah, I think to get us moving along, I'll try to make a motion to direct staff to look at not only presenting these contracts on the next business session, which is next week, but also to look at putting out an RFP for the entire facilities division responsibilities, so that and bring that to council if possible within the next 6 months. Would we, Chris, is that feasible to do within 6 months? Maybe I should wait until there's a second before we even discuss anything about that.
Let's do that. And Councilmembers, I'm just going to ask for clarification. I heard your motion to be to present the janitorial contracts at the next business meeting and to, quote, look into doing an RFP. So my interpretation of that is the staff would look into it, make some sort of recommendation up or down, but not necessarily that it is presupposing the existence of the RFP. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, that's probably not strong enough. I would like to see an RFP put out there to those services. So, you know, you'd have to look into it further, but maybe that should go to Budget Committee first. But again, I do believe we need to look into or move forward with an RFP for the entire facilities division. I mean, the one nice things about these contracts are they are only 30-day contracts. If we do an RFP that has a part A, part B, we may end up with one doing everything, or we may end up on one doing just a maintenance portion, and we can keep the contracts that we currently have with the current vendors.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. So the motion has 2 parts. 1, present janitorial for approval next business meeting, and 2, prepare a RFP in the next 6 months. Okay, so is there a second to the motion? Councilmember Boyette.
Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. I would request a split vote on those 2 things. They're different issues.
Yeah, and then procedurally, I don't know whether we can mandate that. We don't have our parliamentarian.
Gina's not here, but I know Gina, there is
Gina.
some provision for splitting votes, and I can't remember where it lies exactly, but
Councilor Manise is the expert on that. He usually brings that up.
That's a good, that is a good point. I have brought that up many times. And I think because the item we brought to us was regarding the entire department, I don't think it's two different issues to split.
We'll see if Gina has a comment on the question.
Thanks, Mayor. I would say that because generally in a regular business meeting, you're entitled to split it if they're separate issues and you want to vote separately, different way, that would make sense. This is a informal work session, so frankly, Mayor, I think you can make that decision, how you want this to occur. This is just giving staff direction. It makes sense to me that if there are people who want to vote differently on the two different motions, then you have no choice but to split that.
Yeah. Councilor Bernice, I think we're going to get if I say let's handle them together, we're going to get a motion to amend yours and deal with them separately. Would it be okay just to deal with Part A and then Part B?
I think we would probably wait for a motion to amend then, because I believe they do need to be together.
Okay, then I'll make a motion to amend it.
Well, we need a second first. Oh, there is. I'm sorry. We had it from Councilmember Boyette. So, Councilmember Shaw.
I'll make a motion to amend the motion to split the votes into two different issues.
Okay, is there a second on that? I'll second that motion. Okay, so any discussion now before we proceed to a vote on the proposed amendment? And again, that's just the splitting, it's the procedural thing. Councilmember Gulick?
I'm sorry, can you just communicate what the two motions would be then, or the two things?
Sure, if the motion to separate them prevails, then we will proceed first to Councilmember Nice's first motion to present the janitorial ones at the next business meeting. After that's resolved, we would then address the doing an RFP on the maintenance issue. This is purely a procedural thing. Make sense? Okay, so if in favor of the motion to separate these, say aye. Aye. Council members Gulick, Shaw, Cole, and there was one down here. Okay. And if opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay, I think that that was council members Boyette, Shaw, Tidswell, Rupsis. Okay, there's a majority. Okay, so we're going to deal with these as a package. You get a special deal today. A package.
Mayor, don't go so far.
Excuse me?
I'm going to make an amendment to the.
Okay, so now we're back to the original motion, A and B. Further discussion now on that motion, Councilmember Kennedy.
I'm going to amend the motion to, instead of 6 months, we'd like the RFP to come back in 1 month.
Okay, you heard the motion. Is there a second? Okay, I'm thinking it died for lack of a second. So we'll proceed to discussion then on the original motion.
Can I speak why I asked for 1 month?
Only if there was a second. That's kind of the way it worked, and there wasn't a second. So I'm sorry. That's just procedurally. Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess before I would vote, I would like to have some idea if that's realistic, the 1 month. Does anyone here could tell us, maybe Chris, is that realistic that you could go out and get RFP within 1 month for something this complex? I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
The way that you're asking that question, I hear you saying like we would bring you the RFP or the actual proposals. Either way, I'm going to bounce this to Kevin in that our priority, I mean, there is a ton of things going on. So what I'm hearing you saying, if you want this done now in 30 days, is this goes above I don't know what. So I'm just going to need some help from Kevin and John, who are closer to what we've got going on the facility side to say, answer your question, can we get an RFP put together in the next 30 days to outsource the entire department.
I think that timeline would be very aggressive to get it done in 30 days, especially with everything else going on in the next topic that we're going to be talking about, especially. If it's just writing up the scope, getting a draft done, potentially yes, but not get it out there on the street in 30 days.
Okay, we're having a bit debate on something that doesn't have a motion, or I mean, it doesn't have a second. But if it's just an issue of clarification, Councilmember Roy, I just don't want to get into this too deep.
I think it is because everybody's talking past each other right now. I think understanding what is possible is relevant to the budget discussion. It's not separate. It's part of the budget discussion. And we RFP all the time. In fact, we've seen people up here who are supposed to RFP. So can we not at least see a scope of services in 30 days?
Yes, I think we can see a scope of services, but we cannot get an RFP out and bid out.
Logically, because
Yes.
people need time to respond and it needs
Absolutely.
time to
Yep.
score. But we could see the direction that we're going in quickly, correct?
Correct. We normally don't bring those back to council. If you're directing staff to do that, we'll start working on that, yes.
And sorry, Mayor, follow up. What's the reasonable timeline to actually have a proposal back? 90 days?
Normally that 90-day mark.
Okay. I could get behind 90 days.
Okay, so Councilmember Kennedy's motion dies for lack of a second. We're back on the original motion to do this in 6 months, both items. Further discussion on the underlying motion. Before it moves to a vote, Councilmember Kennedy, Councilmember Neese?
So I threw out 6 months because I didn't, Kevin, thank you very much for explaining that. I didn't realize how much time. I wanted to make sure staff had enough time, but Councilmember Owen brings up a good point that budget is coming up and we need to know the head of the information sooner than later. And so it may be helpful, Kevin, if, and maybe John, you as well, knowing that we need to have this for budget very quickly. Maybe this, as Councilmember Owen said, the scope of work could be done within 30 days, but then how soon after the budget? So my indication of 6 months was just a random number. If we want to short it to 3 months, I have no problem with that, but I sure don't, I think 30 days to have an RFP, I agree with you. I think that's too short, it's possible. So what would be a best time to get that information to us? And then also then after that, be able to have an RFP, what would you expect the shortest time to be?
So Mayor and Council, I guess I'm not clear of what you're asking for, because normally we don't bring draft RFPs back to you. I mean, we'll put out a scope, we'll do the advertisements, we'll get the RFP back, we'll have our committee that meets and then brings you back, okay, here's our recommendation to accept contracts, or whatever that looks like. You're talking about from that start to finish, minimum of 90 days.
90 days. And so that would be a good time frame to say instead of 6 months, maybe 90 days, but we could still get information back to the budget committee and things like that sooner than that. Is that correct?
Is that what you're directing us to do, is to bring items of it back? Because normally we don't.
I'm
Bring
just
RFPs
asking
back.
if that was the request, that you could have the information, be able to bring it to the budget committee or something like that. Okay, thank you for the information.
Okay, so what's before you still is this original motion?
Mayor?
I'm sorry, Councilmember Kennedy.
Thank you. I would like to amend the motion one more time and bring the scope back to us in 1 month and 90 days have an RFP for the council.
And, okay, and just to clarify, when you say have an RFP, this would be the advertisement ready to go, or responses back? What do you mean by have an RFP exactly?
John, I'll look to you also. I mean, in 90 days, I mean, does that give us enough time to advertise, get responses back, get a committee together with everything going on, make that selection?
Yeah, certainly if we have that deadline, we'll do our best to meet it.
Does that clarify for you?
Yeah, so the 90-day would be to go through the process and have a recommendation. Is that close?
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. Okay, so that's the motion. Was there a second, Councilmember Rogers? Okay, that's the proposed amendment. Further discussion on the proposed amendment before we have a vote on that. Councilmember Shaw?
Yeah, I think it's kind of bonkers down to think that we're going to get this information and use it to make a decision in a matter of weeks or months. It's taken us quite a while to make a decision on 3 positions and 1 contract, and we're talking about exponentially expanding that. I'm definitely a no on the amendment. This is why I also wanted to split the votes, because I still believe they're 2 separate issues. Thank you.
Very good. Further discussion on the proposed amendment. Councilmember Gillick, and we'll try to move to a vote soon.
This does seem like a longer term thing we should be talking about, because when we talk about the whole department, that's quite different than janitorial services and just more routine maintenance of buildings. We're talking about project management and the whole strategy for our whole, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of assets. I do not want to see the city going back to where we were, 5 years ago. That was a disaster. And preventative maintenance is, taking care of real asset management. I mean, that's taking care of the public resources. What we were doing before that, that's why we have so many fire stations that are run down. We just did a terrible job with that. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be done some other way, but this can't just be rushed into this. And so we have to be really clear about what we're talking about. What level are we talking about? It's clearly, we're talking about more than janitorial. I hear maintenance, that may be a good way of going. But when we're talking about actual management of the assets of this city, I'm a hard no on in sort of going out for that, but certainly not in a rushed manner.
Very good. Further discussion on the Councilmember Rogers?
I agree that it's a very important department, and there's a lot of important work that's being done. We are facing our third issue to talk about tonight, some very severe budget cuts across the city. We need the information, and I hate that it's a short turnaround. I understand the pressure that it's going to put you guys under. This is data that we need to be able to know where we're at with the rest of the city budget.
Very good. Further discussion? I'm just going to chime in. I'm very skeptical, like Councilmember Gulick. We're talking about directing staff to act inconsistently with what staff has already determined, at least preliminarily, that this is not a way to save money. But they admit we haven't gotten into a lot of detail there, so I'm just skeptical. I would encourage staff, if this passes, to come back with some sort of a status update or process update as the process moves, in case we want to jettison and not continue down this path. But I do understand that, there's money to be saved here potentially. I just hate to waste a lot of staff time if we know going into it between now and 90 days that it's not going to work out, or it very well might not. Kevin, you wanted to comment, though.
Yeah, I just want to make just clarification on what your RFP includes, because does it include all the facilities that are listed on this slide here? Those are the facilities that we will be asking in an RFP.
I'd have to look to the movement.
Right now, the motion's on the timing. We can address that on the main question.
I would agree with that. Right now, the only amendment is the change of the scope in 90 days, and that could be clarified in that scope discussion. And then recommendation in 90 days. Presumably, the scope would be, council would be asked to weigh in on that. Okay, any further discussion? Chris?
In the spirit of a work session, I want to ask Councilmember Kennedy, would we accomplish what you want to accomplish of presenting to you results of an RFP for the full scope by the time we adopt a final budget, if in fact we're going to adopt a final budget in the fall timeline that the statute has? So that is some 90 plus days from now, but not much more. If we are actually end up adopting it, we adopt a preliminary in June, but I suspect based on our next discussion, the final budget won't be adopted until the September time period. Would that give us, it seems to me that might give us more time to do it right and actually show you what we get back for proposals than coming here with a scope, coming here with pieces and moving that way.
Mayor, Chris, I guess the one thing that I'm looking at is I'm real disappointed that you looked at just janitorial and you didn't look at all of it. And that's goes on your shoulders and not anywhere else. That's a direction that you should have taken. I really do feel, and Mayor, I understand what you're saying. You want bits and pieces to come back. We already have a motion in place to come back with a scope in a month and then an RFP with proposals in 3 months. I think that's very clear, and I think it's very doable. Because as we start the other budget process, we're going to have to cut. And there is no new money to add more facilities people or anything else. So we're going to have to do something about it. And, you know, I'm not talking against the other, the facilities or the janitorial contract. I just think the facilities and the maintenance part, when you have the majority of your work that's contracted out, then why don't you contract out with a building company to come in and do that? And if that's confusing and too confusing for some council people to understand, it's because I think we need to start looking at apples to apples. So I'd really like to see that what I'm hearing around town is different than what you're trying to tell me tonight, Kevin. And so I would like to see it and then get us on our way so we can see if it's feasible or not. So that's, and maybe we need a council person or two involved with the scope and the committee as you go forward. I think that would be helpful. So I would like to go forward with the motion as we said.
Okay, very good. Let's move to a vote, council. This is again only on the amendment or the timing question. 1 month for scope and 90 days for RF or a recommendation on the RFP. If in favor of the motion for that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
If opposed, nay. Voting in opposition, council members Rupsison, Shaw, and Gulick. So the motion passes. Now on the amended motion, which is the two pieces, move ahead with the janitorial and then the RFP based on the schedule we just described. I'm hoping we don't need any further discussion on that. So we'll proceed to a vote. Councilmember Neese?
I think since Kevin asked that question, I told him I'd defer it till the actual motion is, Kevin, my intention is, as I understand, is that, yeah, the entire facilities department. So yeah, everything in there. So it would be, you know, everything, except for probably the airport, because the airport's really completely separate from what the rest of but that's my understanding is what we want to look in the entire facilities department.
So everything listed on this slide, because there's like airport training center that we do deal with, so that's included.
And that would probably be typically into the airport, I would assume. Is that correct?
It's at the airport, but we do maintain that facility.
That you do everything that, yeah, the facilities department. Again, this is one of those things when you look at the RFP, there could be some different options in there, whether you have those or not in there. So yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Councilor Rupsis.
Curious if that includes the Babcock and Depot and other city-owned buildings that we should be doing maintenance on.
So we do some project management assistance with those and coordination with those with the city. So if we want to include those, it would be on the project management side, yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? Again, just my request that as you move forward and if you get some information, continue to bring it to council. Are we ready to vote? I think so. So if the motion is clear, if in favor of the motion, now please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. If opposed, nay. Voting in opposition, council members Gulick and Shaw. All other council members voting in the affirmative. So the motion passes, and I think that resolves item number 2. Thank you, everybody, for the discussion.
So did we get direction on what's going on with the custodial contract?
Yes, that was the
Okay.
first part
So that one's
that's
moving forward.
moving ahead.
Thank you. Sorry for the confusion.
Very good. Thank you, everybody, and for the members of the public for your input. That brings us to the main act of this play, which is item number 3. Not to denigrate the others, but certainly very important. This is our property tax legislation and budget impact. Before we get into this, I just want to make a few preliminary comments about procedure here. About procedure and goals for our discussion. First, I do appreciate everybody's work on this. Staff has been burning the midnight oil for weeks on the impact of Senate Bill 542 and House Bill 231. And it wasn't until legislature acted in literally the last day of the session last week that we knew what was coming out of the legislature. And also thank you, members of the Budget and Finance Committee, Operations Committee, others who have been looking at this in more detail in the last couple days. This is a terribly compressed schedule because of the last minute nature of the legislative action last week. So in a minute, I'm going to just turn it over to staff for their presentation. I think that's going to be mostly Andy and Gina. They've asked that they be allowed to complete their presentations before council poses any questions. You'll have an opportunity, though, to have those questions answered. And then I think it's something that everybody may want to chime in with. So I'll at least initially select somebody at random, and then we can just kind of go around the table and make sure everybody has an opportunity. And I'll just ask that you keep your comments, at least initially, to just those 2 questions. And then after the question period, as we've done typically, I'll open it up for public comment. Then I'll come back to the council for further questions and any discussion or motions. Please note that this is a work session, so the goal is to just give direction to staff. We're not going to be able to resolve final items here, but Andy's presentation, if you saw the version that he sent out this afternoon, does specifically ask for direction on 3 issues. So pay attention to those. We want to make sure that staff gets the direction that they're looking for one way or another. And then depending on that council direction, we are under very strict time constraints, so we'll have to keep that in mind, of course. So again, thank you for your diligence and patience as we work through all of this. Certainly creates a very perplexing financial situation that's faced the city, maybe the most complicated in recent memory. So before we go into that, Councilmember Kennedy?
I just
and then I'll
wanted to know, our chairman of our budget committee, are we still meeting on the regular budget schedule that we have put together? So are we meeting this Wednesday? Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And we'll turn it to the city administrator. Chris.
So my apologies for the mayor outlined things, and I'll repeat some of it. I just wanted to outline specifically the goals for tonight. First, our first goal is to walk away with an understanding of the implications of Senate Bill 542 and House Bill 231 on Billings residents and on our city's revenue. So that's kind of priority 1 or goal 1. Goal 2, I need direction from you. I have a charter responsibility to present you with a balanced budget. That balanced budget was ready to start being presented this evening, but that was based on a set of assumptions that are no longer accurate. So I need to know, are we building, we're not starting from scratch by taking what was a budget developed off of a 4% growth number and now building that off of roughly 240.65 mils or 203 mils. And then lastly, I think it's maybe more of a future question, but I don't think it would be appropriate to try to get through this night without at least touching on it, which is we got a future question relative to when will a charter amendment go to the voters? Is that a 2025 question, 26, or something later? So those are really our 3 goals for tonight. As the mayor outlined, Andy is going to cover the highlights. If you let him present, our city attorney Gina is going to give some legal perspective. We thought we'd do Q&A after that, public comment, and then get into the direction. And one of the things I've loved about being in Montana, raising kids for 26 years, my senior is giving her last concert tonight. So I'm going to sneak out of here and I'll listen as I'm driving across town and I'll be back. But I'm going to turn it over to these guys and then I'll see you when I get back. So thank you.
Thank you. And council, I'll just point out, it's now 7:20. Often we skip a break during work session. That's probably what we'll do tonight. But if you wanted to take a break, now would be the time to do it before we get into this and have to kind of break midstream probably. So, and it's fine if you'd like to take a 5-minute break now. Otherwise, we'll just keep going. And again, feel free, of course, to get up and take a break if you'd like to. So I am seeing people heading for the exits. So what's that? All right, we having a few people take the opportunity. So it's 7:21. Anybody? Let's be sure to start again by 7:30. That's 9 minutes.
Should take like 35 seconds to get to this presentation.
Okay, if we're all back together again. Welcome back, everybody. It's 7:31. We left off with our, about to turn it over to Andy and to Gina for their presentation. So with that, go ahead, Andy.
All right, thank you, Mayor and City Council. I will try to move through this, hopefully not too quickly, but fast enough so we don't spend an hour on the presentation. So House Bill 231, Senate Bill 542 have both passed the legislature. They are not yet to the governor, but all indications are they will be signed by the governor, and at this point, that's what we're assuming. Ultimately, they do reduce property taxes for residents across the state of Montana, primarily shifting to second homes and short-term rentals, of which there are not many in Billings, and then shifting taxes to larger industry and commercial business. Additionally, they do provide a $400 rebate in the first year to homeowners. And that's very high level what they do, but the impact in Billings get to. They create a tiered rate structure today for residential property, which is the bulk of the property tax base in Billings. The taxable value rate is 1.35% for all residential property up to 1.5 million, and something like 98% of our properties in Billings are under 1.5 million. So essentially it's 1.35 for the city of Billings. They create a tiered rate structure. It's fixed, 3 fixed tiers. This next fiscal year, again, begins on July 1. And you can see them there. And then in year 2, they go to a 4-tier rate structure. The tiers that are projected up there are approximate. They actually become a function of the median home in the state of Montana. So don't know exactly what those will be, but the tiers there are approximate for that. And assuming no changes by the legislature in the future, those tiers would change every year as the median home in Montana changes, because there are multiple of that median home. So I put together 3 scenarios for you based on the bills that have passed. They have language in them that say something to the effect of the local governing body shall levy the number of mills in fiscal year 26 that it takes to generate the same revenue that you assessed in fiscal year 25, regardless of what you may have in a charter or, in other cities' cases, fixed mills that have been voted on. We've got some information from the Department of Revenue that indicates the taxable value in Billings will drop from $273 million to $229 million in year 1. We won't know the actual final number until the first week of August, but this is probably pretty accurate at this point. So in order to generate that same amount of revenue in fiscal year 25, or in fiscal year 26 that was generated in fiscal 25, we would have to levy 240.65 mills. You have a charter that spells out the maximum amount that can be levied, and the total of all of those charter amendments is 203 mills. Then, because it's a 2-year implementation, the Department of Revenue and the expansion of those going from 3 tiers to 4 tiers, the Department of Revenue is projecting another decrease in fiscal year 27 from 229 to 224. So if those are all accurate, we would be fixed at 240.65 mills, and then you get to fiscal year 27 and you'd realize about $1 million reduction in tax revenue. The other option there I have in the middle, total mills 2, would be if you stayed with the charter language and levied 203 mills in fiscal year 26 at these new taxable value rates, you would go down by $8.6 million relative to the fiscal year 25 revenue. As Chris mentioned earlier, just so you're aware, we built the proposed budget assuming a 4% increase in tax revenue. That's about $2.3 million. So in order to have a revenue loss of 8.6 million, we would need to start with the proposed budget and reduce it by about 10.9 million. Again, in the fiscal year 27, you levying 203 mills, you'd lose $1 million again. The other option that I had put together was just purely for reference point. If you were to remain revenue neutral, how many mills would you need? 240.65 again, first fiscal year, and then it'd go up slightly to capture that $1 million loss. That is not available to you in the law. That would require a mill levy election. So that does not exist to you today. So you do not have the total mills 3 was just put up there to say how many mills to stay revenue flat for 3 years in a row. And you'd have to go up to 246 in fiscal year 27. But that option doesn't exist to you under the statute. You don't have the statutory authority to do that. You would have to go to the voters to get from 240 to 246. Okay. Yep. So this slide, what I've attempted to do is demonstrate to you those same 3 options and what the impact to the median home in Billings would be. Today, the median home of assessed value is $309,000. That's going to change. It's a reappraisal year. We don't know what that number is. It's likely to go up. And the estimates that we're coming up with is going to be right around $350,000. So in order to keep the median home consistent and demonstrate what the impact is, under the statutory mill levy limitation, if you went from 201 mills today to the new 240 mill cap that would generate the 55 million, that median home, even though it's going up in value because of the reduction in the taxable value rate being so significant, they would realize about a $205 reduction on their property tax bill for the City of Billings portion only. City of Billings makes up about 30% of the tax bill if you live in School District 2 and the county. I don't know what the impact is for the portions that are the county and the school district. I don't have a way of figuring that out. And you don't have jurisdiction over that anyway. So this is demonstrating what that impact is to the median home, again, relative to their FY25 tax bill. Under the charter mill levy limitation, same exact assumptions. With fewer mills, you would go to 203. The realized savings there over the fiscal 25 budget is $100 more, or $305. And then maintain 2025 tax revenue, again, would require a levy. It would be 205 that first year, and then 190 that second year, because it would go up slightly. And that's because the number of mills would go up slightly. So what I put together here is just a representation for maybe a point of reference. If the City of Billings realized a $10 million reduction in tax revenue, the reductions need to come from tax-supported departments. So a reduction in water or solid waste does nothing because there's no tax revenue that go to support those operations. There's about $89 million towards these tax-supported departments, largely public safety, being police and fire, courts, legal, and code enforcement, making up 78%. And then 8% to parks, 7% to city admin, which would be city admin, mayor and council, finance, HR, library, and MET. Library 3%, MET 4%. If you took the 10 million proportionate, it would be an 11.2% reduction in each of those departments listed there. This is just, these are approximate numbers, but relative to their FY25 budget, and just to get a sense of how significant police and fire are for where our tax dollars go, they clearly make up the bulk of our tax expenditures. To put it another way, if the approach was to say, all right, we're going to get rid of all capital spend and all of our set-asides for equipment replacement, technology replacement, the way I coined that, kick the can, but in some cases not very far, you could capture about $5 million out of the proposed budget. then you still have a remaining 5 million to get to that $10 million cut. The bulk of the spend here, once you get rid of capital out of that pie chart, you've got personal services at that point 78%, and then operations and maintenance making up the remainder. Just this slide here, attempting to demonstrate what going to the 240.65 mills would do relative to our proposed budget, which was built on a 4% increase. So we'd reduce it that first year by the 2.3 million. That second year implementation, we lose $1 million plus any growth that would have been experienced. So I guess maybe I should say this in a different way. If they didn't change the tax law, we built out what our projections would be with reappraisal cycles at about 4% on reappraisal years, 1.5% on the off years, relative to that projection on the new tax bill. In over 10 years, it's $46 million. In order to remain revenue neutral relative to the current tax law, you guys would need to go out for a levy for an additional 19.35 mils in fiscal year 27 to make up for that loss. And then assuming growth happens similar in the future as it has in the past, and because of the changing of those tiers being relative to the median home, I don't know that that's what you will experience. But if you assumed that similar growth in the future, you'd be largely revenue neutral. Even if you were to levy an additional 19 mils, and that's, to be clear, on top of the 240 that's statutorily allowed, there would still be property tax relief on that median home and the majority of home in Billings. So the decision we need from council is, do we develop a budget with $9 to $10 million in reductions over FY25? That's, I guess, really over the FY26 proposed would take us down 10.9 million. Or do we develop a budget assuming the 2025 revenue? Potentially going to a mill levy election, although we got some information late this afternoon that may not be possible this fiscal year coming up. And then do you want to look at going for a mill levy election in the next 12 months? I think it's worthy of a conversation, maybe not need to be hashed out tonight. So statutory deadline for setting your mills this year is September 4th, 2025. That means you need to know the results of an election before that night when you would take action. It would also require a special meeting because that's a Thursday. The county election requires 85 days advance notice, and then we would have to do the first reading before that. So when you back all that up, it's about 100 days from the first reading to the day of the election. The timeline presented here was attempting to say, if you wanted to have the results before September 4th, what's the timeline that the latest you could take that first reading action item? However, the county weighed in today that they do not think that this question would qualify for a special election. So this may not be available because the primary election is September 9th, which is after September 4th. However, I'll go through what I had here just so you're aware. We'd have to do legal advertisement, just notifying that there's going to be a meeting on an ordinance change in about 10 days. Then on the 26th, your regular meeting, you would have to have first reading of the ordinance, which would include ballot language. You'd have second reading then the following meeting, and then a special election date on September 2nd, which is the Tuesday after Labor Day. You would then have to have a special meeting on Wednesday or Thursday, setting those mills in order to meet statutory compliance to make it effective for the FY26 budget. Again, the budget calendar, or the budget was originally built 4%, assuming a 4% tax growth. In either case, we'll need to modify that proposed budget, hence we're not presenting it tonight. And then the recommendation will be, we'll go back and modify the budget based upon your direction tonight, come back to work sessions on the 19th and 20th. Those were originally planned, and then June 2nd and June 3rd, which will be a Monday, Tuesday in June. The goal would be to have the council adopt a preliminary budget in June, but delay final adoption until after the true mill number and tax revenue is known. You have that authority under the statute. We haven't ever really done that. We've done final budget in June historically, but there hasn't been this large of a tax change bill before. So that excuse me. And again, you won't know the total mills until August anyway. The Budget and Finance Committee made the following recommendations. Admittedly, there's a little bit new information here that they hadn't seen. The first one was to develop a budget that reflects levying 203 mills and reduce the property tax revenue from the proposed budget by 10.9 million. And then put something on the ballot for voters to consider in September, and then adjust the budget calendar to adopt a preliminary budget in June and a final budget in August or September. Again, I don't know that putting something on the ballot in September that would become effective for fiscal year 26 is possible at this point. So to the end of my presentation, really what I'm looking for, a very clear direction from the body as a whole. What are the assumptions that we're developing the budget on? Revenue neutral to 25, or the 203 mills reduction of 8.6 million in property tax revenue? And then if we were to prepare a mill levy to voters, what does that look like timeline wise? I will turn it to Gina. Is yours in here? All right. One moment, please.
Good evening, Council. I am going to, first of all, I'm just going to start with the questions that I think that I've heard mostly from everybody, and tell you what I am going to try to cover tonight. So the questions that have generally been thrown around are, first, is the city of Billings required to act as directed by the legislature in House Bill 231 and Senate Bill 542, and that is to where the direction is the city shall levy the number of mills in fiscal year 26 and subsequent tax years that will generate the amount of property taxes assessed in fiscal year 25 without amending or revising the charter, if that number of mills would exceed the city of Billings charter. And the second question is, what, if anything, could the state do if the city did not levy as directed in those two bills? And third, what effect would a ballot question in September have on this issue? And then lastly, what are the risks to the city if it follows the directives or if it does not follow the directives? So this first slide, I actually just kind of threw some slides together today, so I hope that this covers everything, but feel free to ask me whatever questions if I've missed something. So I'm just starting out with the constitutional authority that the city obviously has. A local government unit can adopt a self-governing charter, and it may exercise any power not prohibited by the Constitution, law, or charter. This authority is also codified in state code. This authority was then codified in state law under these three sections that you see up here. The the one on the bottom there is the one that indicates state law is applicable until it's superseded. So generally, even as a self-governing city, all state statutes are applicable until they're superseded by an ordinance or resolution. But that's subject to limitations in the code and in Title VII, Chapter 1 and Part 1. And those sections are, I've just listed a couple of them. Well, actually, these are the applicable ones: 7-1, 111, 112, 113, and 114. These are the statutes that list. I didn't put the whole statute because they're really long. For example, this first 111 is 2 or 3 pages long. There's a whole laundry list of things that are denied a local government unit with self-governing powers. You're not allowed to exercise certain things. And in section 112, a local government is prohibited exercising powers unless it's specifically delegated to the city. And in 113, any ordinances or resolutions you pass must be consistent with state regulation. And then in section 114, these are a laundry list of provision that you're subject to. And this is the one that we're going to talk a little bit in more depth about. One of the questions that I looked at here, it was whether this legislative directive constituted an express prohibition that would forbid the city from acting other than directed by 231 and 542. And this section 114 has an important provision in it that says local government with self-governing powers is subject to the following provisions. Subsection F, any law directing or requiring a local government or any officer or employee of a local government to carry out any function or provide any service. And then subsection 2 indicates that these provisions are considered a prohibition on the self-government unit acting other than as provided. So if there is a state law that directs a local government to do something, that then is considered a prohibition on that government unit acting otherwise. And this code section has been, there's several AG opinions, there's several cases that support that, and the Supreme Court has stated that notwithstanding its broad self-government powers, a city must carry out any function or provide any service required by state law, and that's that section above in 114 sub 1F. One of the AG opinions that I reviewed, it's from a long time ago, but I thought it would be a good example to provide for council to get sort of an idea. In 1989, the AG considered whether a self-governing city could enact a municipal ordinance reducing the number of hours during which city offices must be open pursuant to 7-4-102, which is different now, but back then it required certain amount of hours to be open. And the AG concluded that state statutes are applicable to local governments with self-government powers until superseded. However, the authority to enact such ordinances is subject to the limitations of those sections that I showed you in previous slides. Specifically 7-1-114 provides that a local government with self-government powers is subject to any law directing or requiring a local government or any officer or employee of a local government to carry out any function or provide any service. So in that instance, that particular city, I think it was Belgrade, if I recall correctly, they were having serious budget issues. They were trying to open city offices later or close city offices earlier. They wanted to enact an ordinance to supersede that state law, and the AG said that they could not do that because of the language was mandatory, and it indicated that every officer must keep his office open for the transaction of business continuously, and every officer shall keep his office open at such other times as required, so it used that mandatory language. And the AG said that that was prohibited based on this language. So here we have under House Bill 231 and Senate Bill 542, these two bills do not provide an express prohibition from the city acting in the area generally. That means obviously the city is entitled to set rates, enact taxes, certain things like that. But as you know, and I've cited it earlier, the bills do include an express mandate to carry out a specific function. That specific language, which I've read before, is just up here in front of you, and the bolded language is the mandate that the city shall levy the number of mills. This language is pretty clear, pretty, in my opinion, it's unmistakably clear, as is the intent statement of the two bills, which indicates that the legislature intended to supersede the local government charters. It down to the red language. Given the significant change in the structure of property tax and the rising costs of residential property in the last 5 years, there's compelling interest to all citizens of the state to lower residential property tax rates for primary residences. And in my opinion, this leaves no room for an election on the issue. The legislature has issued its mandate. It's required. It's mandatory language for fiscal year 26. Any ballot issue that were to be presented to voters would need to be consistent with state law and actually would not be able to be effective until later years when the city then has the discretion to levy outside of the mandatory language. And as I understand it, there was an amendment that indicated after the first year that the city does have that discretion to levy less than the amount that is. And so in 25, 26, it's resetting that cap, so to speak. And then following years, it's supposed to be the discretionary. Now, the language doesn't reflect that at this point, so we're trying to figure that out, why the language on the actual website doesn't reflect the amendments that we observed and heard. I didn't, but I think a couple other people in our office and from the league actually observed that amendment being made and approved. So I think that the website maybe just is not accurate. So one other thing that I think is really important for you to consider in this whole risk analysis issue is, so what could happen? There's not like an enforcement mechanism here. There's not something that's the state isn't going to take any action against the city if it does not follow the language of the statute, but it's important to consider that reimbursement for loss of revenue that would result from the tax rate reductions would likely, that wouldn't be in existence. The only way to get that reimbursement is for following the law. That includes any damages if this were to be challenged and the city were to be sued. If there was a judgment levy against the city, then the reimbursement would include any of those damages or fines or penalties or whatever you want to call any civil judgment. So if the city disregards the bills, there would be no provision for reimbursement. The state has essentially assumed all of that risk in this legislation. And if the city disregards the bills, then the city then assumes that risk. Any other risks that I could think of are they're the typical, any property taxpayer would have standing to challenge the actions of the city, whether that would fall on either way. If the city did follow the law, then there's a potential for a challenge that somebody could say you violated our charter, you shouldn't have done that. Same thing the other way. If the city does not follow, what did I just say? Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So if the city did not levy in accordance with the statute, then there could potentially be a taxpayer who could challenge based on reduction of city services or something and say you should have levied and my services were reduced, or some other type of challenge potentially. Yeah, there could be a lot of different challenges, I think, for that, and a lot of them are speculative, but pretty much all property taxpayers would have standing to challenge that. In my opinion, there's more risk for not following the state's mandate because all of the law is pretty clear, constitutional. The Constitution's clear. I think the state code is clear. The AG opinions and Supreme Court case law have interpreted it as I've set forth before. So in my opinion, there's more risk to not follow the state's mandate. And that was the last slide that I had. I think I covered the 5 questions that I wanted to. So if you have any follow-up on that, please let me know.
Okay, we'll move into questions, but Andy made reference to the issue of the whether this would be a special election and is possible. And I know we got a letter from the county attorney's office. I think what he was referring to. Were you going to address that, or?
Sure, I can address that briefly. The state statute allows for a special election to be called and held on. So generally when a local government wants to call an election, those are required to be held on the dates for the primary or for the general. A special election for a funding purpose can be held on a different date. The county attorney's office, in conjunction with the elections office, has indicated that this type of question, which would be a charter amendment, is not a special election for funding purposes. It is an election for a charter amendment, which is a distinction. And that is not an issue that I've researched because I was focused on this other case law today when this came in. But that's the determination that they've made. So that they wanted to weigh in to let us know that they do not believe that a proposed election for this purpose would meet the criteria for a special election under Montana law to be held earlier. September 2nd, I think, was the date we kind of were throwing out there.
Very good. And since you just got that
this
today,
afternoon,
maybe you could circulate that to the council as soon as you can.
Sure.
Okay, anything else, Andy, or Gina, or Kevin from staff before we open up for questions from council? Okay, it doesn't look like it. So let's have some questions. We'll start with Councilmember Kennedy. We'll just go clockwise. Just ask you to keep it to 2 questions, and then that way everybody will have a chance to.
Andy, the Budget and Finance Committee met, and we asked that you put together a budget that reflects levying the 203 mills. Is that the direction that all the departments are doing? And are they going to have a one side of things that absolutely they need, and the other side we could do without if we didn't have the money, but it would be, we would need to scale down some areas? Are we actually looking at a reduction? Or is everybody just planning their budget at the 240 mills?
So council, I can answer that. So we did meet with all the directors late last week, and kind of gave them a heads up on this. And based on kind of what the Budget and Finance Committee was directing, we said you need to start thinking about programs and then what costs are associated with those programs, be thinking of a priority of where those kind of fall. and take it down. You know, when we normalized, the potential reduction was 11.5%, but we did ask them to go down to about 18% of their tax-funded budget. So then we could then bring those together and mesh those. So the answer to your question is yes, but just a little bit different.
Okay. The other question I do have is, Andy, you have a $10 million reduction in tax revenue. You have police at 3.7, fire at 3.1, courts at 242,000. Is there a way, if the departments have reduced their budgets down to the 203 mills, that if we went with the additional mills that the state says, can we allocate those dollars in the areas? I'm really big on public safety and making sure we make them whole.
Councilmember Kennedy, council has discretion to allocate tax dollars however they see fit, so long as they're within the scope of the charter. Like, you don't have authority to levy for library and use it for public safety, but you know, the bulk of your mills are public safety.
Okay, we'll just keep going this way. Councilmember Aspenleiter?
Yeah, thanks, Andy, for putting that together. I wasn't at the Budget and Finance Committee last week. I don't think that I would have supported putting together a 203 mil budget. I think at some point when we do have to take this to the voters, which to me, looking at the language and the statute, looks like that's something to take to the voters in 2026 for the 2027 budget. I think we're going to need that information, what our hard cap is currently versus what the 240 is directed by the statute, to clearly explain to the public what sticking to the hard cap means in service and service reduction. So I think we need that at some point, but I don't think at this point we have much in the way of leeway to vary from the very clear directive that the legislature has given us, which I expect to be signed into law. So it's an exercise I think we have to go through, whether we go through it this year or go through it next year and, you know, update this year's next year. I guess that's a conversation to me that we can have. But to me, I think the legislative directive is very clear, and the risk for the city and for the city budget is not worth the challenge. I mean, one of the things that, from my perspective, I think we risk, not only does every taxpayer have standing to challenge us if we don't do as directed by the legislature, when we cut positions and reduce service, particularly in our public safety positions, I would fully expect lawsuits from the police union and the fire union. And I think they have every standing to do that. And when we lose that, we've got nobody but ourselves to fund that. And then we end up in the same place. So yes, every taxpayer has the right, but we have union negotiated contracts that are going to be certainly looking at this situation and putting us in a box for not following the state statute. So to me, the risk associated with this is way greater to the city, to the taxpayers, and the people that are going to foot this bill at the end of the day by not following the state statute than by following it. I am not personally interested in setting us back 10 years in public safety in this community. That's not something I'm interested in having a conversation about. Our economic growth in this community hinges upon public safety and having a safe, clean, and healthy community. And if we do not follow this legislative direction, it sets us 10 years back. And it's not like we can lay these people off, firefighters and police officers, prosecutors and judges. And when we come back in 2027 and we actually put a ballot measure together, that we're just going to hire them right back. They're going to be gone. And it's going to take us years to fill those positions with experienced people that want to come to work for a city that haphazardly addressed this issue.
And Councilmember Espler, I apologize for interrupting because this is obviously so important, and I appreciate your desire to jump to the point. But my suggestion is we try to stick with this component to questions, kind of factual questions. That way we don't prejudice public input. We get the public input, come back for discussion on more of those ultimate points. I'm not going to tell you not to talk, but you can kind of understand the point, I think.
Yeah, I'll save the rest of my comment for the end.
Discussion component. We'll make sure everybody has an opportunity there. So with that, if you can, try to focus on kind of factual or legal issues or questions. Councilor Bernice?
Great. Thank you, Mayor. And Gina, just I guess a couple of questions for you. Clarification on one, and the other is, I mean, when you look at what the state stated, it's thou shalt. I mean, we have to, they're directing us to do it, but yet when we look at our charter, the council shall not. And so we can't levy more than 74 mills without the voter approval. So either way the council acts, are we in violation of our oath of office for either the city of charter or a violation of our oath of office of supporting the Constitution of Montana? Are we in violation of both of those, either way we act?
I think, Councilmember Bernice, I think that your obligation is first and foremost to the Montana State Constitution.
But that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, are we in violation of the charter by acting, by taking the state's directive to increase the taxes over the mill, the limitations the people of the city have put on the city council through this administrative directive, or are we in violation of the state charter if we stick to our charter?
So my opinion on that is this legislation expressly supersedes the city charter. So you would not be in violation of the charter. I believe that this legislation invalidates that particular section of the charter. So it's my opinion that you would not be in violation of the charter. You would be following your oath to the Constitution and the laws of the state.
Okay, thank you. And then the other clarification on, you said some amendment was that you said you heard or someone heard it was inaccurate. What I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch what that
Yeah, I
was talking about.
apologize. That is to the language. Yes, right there. Thanks, Andy. So this second shall in the bottom of where Andy's highlighted it right there, that was amended to the word may on the floor and during conference committee. And somehow that didn't make it onto the site.
Okay,
so
so that's
we're just trying to clarify what
It's
happened.
no longer a shall. We
That's our understanding.
may.
Yeah, that's our
Okay.
understanding.
Councilor Rogers?
Kind of a naive question here. What do you consider the possibility of a financial injunction against us if we do levy the new number of mills as we're being directed and we are sued? Is that a possibility that these funds, this revenue, could be tied up in court?
Well, I mean, I think anything's possible. I don't think it's likely. That's my opinion about that. I don't think it's likely given the current state of the law, our constitution, our state code, the way this legislation is written. I don't think it's likely, but anything is, I'm never going to say never.
Anything else? So my question, is probably a question you can't answer, but I think it needs to be highlighted just for future consideration. If the city council proceeds with following state law and assessing the 240.65 mils, the statute it deals with that as a whole and kind of seems to imply that's one limitation, when we know in reality it's a series of sub-limitations, I guess, that cumulatively total the 203 or the 240, 70 of which are for general purposes. Everything else, or maybe everything else, is for public safety in a couple different batches. And then maybe library was a component, I think. So, and I think this was raised before. What do we do with the allocation of the extra above 203 to 240? Common sense and fairness would sort of suggest that those be allocated proportionally to their underlying limitation. Or, and this is kind of, it was Councilmember Kennedy's question, are we free to take the difference, 240 minus 203, and allocate them all to general purposes, all to one element of public safety? Do we have an answer to that? Obviously, it wasn't something that was expressly addressed.
Mayor, I would look to one past practice in Billings since the charter, which actually I believe your resolution states the number of mills for the specific purpose. It doesn't just say, your resolution setting mills doesn't just say 203, it's 74 for general, 5 for library, et cetera. So I think that the language here would be setting the number of mills specific to each of those areas that would generate the same amount of revenue that was generated in fiscal 25.
Which would essentially be a proportional allocation.
Exactly.
In order to get to those, otherwise each one would be shortchanged. Or one of them would be.
One of them would be, yeah.
You didn't do that,
Or
okay, which
4 of
would be arguably inconsistent with the intent of the language. Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Shaw?
Thank you. I just have a question about the ballot question. I think your analysis is right, that it's a conversation worthy of discussion. Personally, I won't get into discussion, Mayor, but I don't want to rush into it. I just have some questions about how much flexibility we still have and what that ballot question would look like when it comes back. I know the legislative landscape is always changing. Would we have to go out to the voters and say, first, we need you to increase our mill cap up to 240, and then any additional amount beyond that? Or could we have a ballot question that says, that's the new state mandated limitation, where the question is going to be whatever's additional? Does that make sense?
Well, I think a lot of these answers are going to take some time. We need to work through them, but I think, I don't believe that you have to go to the voters. This legislation tells you what to do. And as I read earlier, it explicitly supersedes our charter. So, I mean, technically, you wouldn't ever have to go out to a vote. There could be an annotation in our charter that says this particular section has been superseded and is no longer valid.
I guess
That would be part of our charter that we didn't use. It has been superseded.
that makes
But,
sense.
but in the future, you definitely could go out for a vote and amend our charter to replace those provisions with something else.
We wouldn't have to catch that back up. Does that?
I
I know
I don't
these are
believe so,
unanswerable
no.
questions. I just, as I'm trying to game this out in my head, I thought I'd put that on the table. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rosas?
Thank you, Mayor. So in terms of timing, FY 26 says we shall levy 240.65. FY 27 says we may. Does that mean we can have a vote before the FY 27 budget to do more than that? Or should we consider that our limit And we're really talking about having to have something in place for FY '28. Or do we just not know enough yet?
If that change was made to the, you found it? Okay. Then yes, I think that you could have that vote for fiscal year
For FY '27.
27.
My only other question is, this says we shall levy 240.65 this year. It doesn't say we shall pass a budget that allocates all 240, does it? Is there some argument that says if we levy that money, we have to pass a budget that spends it all? Is there some method for setting that aside while we decide the issue with voters to even get the authorization, respecting the intent of the mill cap, the local mill cap, while also respecting the state legislature's mandate?
Councilmember Rupsis, in the scenario you're describing, nothing is coming to mind that would require you to allocate those funds. In that scenario, they would not be budgeted for, but they would be levied and they would default into reserves, into those funds for future allocation.
Okay, Councilmember Rupsis? Oh, I'm sorry, Tisdale. Okay, because you were done, Tom, so, okay, and so Councilmember Hall?
Thanks, Mayor. I just have a quick technical question before I ask my two substantive, if that's all right. Have you all determined sort of conclusively, as conclusive as anything here, that 863 is overridden by these two bills together? It is not relevant anymore?
That was what we were told by the drafter through the league to us, that the language in 863 is null and void relative to tiers.
Okay. So my two substantive questions. I confess to a little bit of overthinking on this. So this one might be a weird hypothetical, but I just want to make sure that we're not missing anything here. Gina, you had said in one portion of this presentation, when you talked about the state's sort of backfill or reimbursement provision, I feel like we might have overstated it just a little bit. I want to make sure you and I are clear that you agree that it only applies if the state statute is struck down, right? So my question is there any kind of hypothetical that you can think of? I confess I haven't thought of one, but I'm concerned, is there any chance the city falls between a gap wherein we are sued for violating our charter and the courts, in doing what they usually do, which is trying to avoid reaching a constitutional question, say, we're not going to reach the question of state statute. We found some other procedural defect or something in the way the city is operated, and we will say the city was wrong, and we will not reach the question of the statute. Is there a gap there that we could fall into?
Well, I must confess, I haven't gotten that far either.
You haven't overthought this as much?
But I suppose that's possible. I think that with this particular language, it should be presented to the court so that doesn't happen. But of course I suppose that could be a gap.
Because as a follow-up, Mayor, we would no matter what, we would join the state, right? As a co-defendant here, is that your thinking?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, and then we would argue we reasonably relied on it, but in the alternative, we disagree with that statute. So that's question one. Question two, I'm not sure that I'm completely on board that the law is as settled as you say it is, and I think there are a lot of people who dispute that the law is as settled. And I do think the state has created a pretty significant gap in the rational basis of its findings and its action. It makes a number of findings that its intent is to supersede for the purposes of lowering property taxes, and then its action is to, in fact, raise them. So I do think there's still a constitutional question here. But in my sort of still evolving opinion, I'm not sure it's worth that argument. There's a lot of, that is a lengthy argument. I think there's a lot of risk in making the argument. So we sort of have this situation where the state has imposed a mill levy on the people of Billings. And they're very clear in their language that levy exists without amending the charter. So we've sort of casually talked here on council about sort of resetting the mill cap. making these arguments that this sort of raises the 74 mil cap. And I think that's actually not true. I think what this does is impose a levy that is separate and apart from any of our charter protected levies and essentially creates a new standalone levy. And so my question to you is, what would happen? What are the pros and cons of simply doing that, following the letter of the law in its purest sense and saying, we will not amend our charter. There remains a 74 mil cap on the general fund. There is however many mills for public safety, for library, and for transit. And now there is a state-imposed mill levy. And that those show up on the property tax bills as exactly what they are, the charter authorized ones and the one that the state forced upon us. Set at presumably a perpetual 34 mils, although the language of this coordination language should give us the ability to lower that. What if we just called it exactly what it is and left our charter intact?
Well, I'm not prepared to answer that at this point.
Would you mind giving it some thought?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because I think there's a basis to do that. They're very clear that we're not to amend our charter, that they're not granting us the authority to amend. Instead, they are imposing, by statute, a levy on this city. We are not, and I will not. And I don't think that we should conflate our voter-authorized mills with what the state has imposed. They may have the authority to impose it upon us, but then I think we need to call it what it is, a state-imposed tax. And I'd appreciate your thoughts over time on that. And we can also have further discussion offline.
Absolutely.
Unless Andy has thoughts about it.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad Wyatt is here. One of the things I did in my previous life was I spent 10 years on the zoning commission, and there were 10 criteria. One of them was the police were asked and the fire departments were asked, if a new annexation would come into town, would that cause you a problem? And they've always said no. If we ended up, the worst case scenario, reducing police and fire by a substantial number, Wyatt, would that be a reasonable grounds to deny annexation based on one of the criteria? It's amazing what goes through your mind when you're thinking here. The bottom line is, would we reduce annexation because of the criteria?
Says it's working. Yes, there we go. Councilmember Boyette and Mayor and Council, I guess I don't really want to answer that question tonight. But I think your point is a very good point, which is, yeah, looking at, and we've run into this before in past situations with extension of services and annexation, is our in the specific question you have, is the law enforcement and public safety services, emergency services, do we have enough coverage and availability to provide additional services as we increase the area of the city? So I think that question would certainly come into play in this conversation, or in a major, drastic change to the budget for those services. So, yeah. So I mean, I think that would be something that would have to be considered. I don't know exactly how police and fire would manage that, but it would be a serious issue.
Councilor Gillick.
Yes, thank you. Couple of questions. If you go to the 5th slide of Andy's original presentation, there was on the median home impact. Just want to make sure I understood this. So again, there's the 3 different scenarios that you laid out. We see what it affects the median home. And so the first one is, if we just follow the state law, there would be, in fiscal year 2026, $204.93 of savings to that median home. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that savings is coming even though the amount of revenue coming into the city is about the same, because there's a shift of tax burden to other classes. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's my understanding. I haven't got from the Department of Revenue their breakdown of tax classes on their projections. I have asked for it, but in prior iterations from other bills they've sent, it primarily shifts a little bit to class 4 commercial. And I guess I'll use this opportunity to let you know there are changes to class 4 commercial tax structure as well, though they're not the bulk of our property. So it'll shift some to their largely larger commercial properties, and then to centrally assessed property classes. Those are your utilities, pipelines, telecommunications, airlines, that kind of stuff.
And then follow up with, so in the second scenario, the charter mill levy limitation in fiscal year 26, that's a savings for the median home of $305. So it's $100 of additional savings, but that's what makes up the bulk of the potential cuts we would have to make that are laid out on the next page, 10 million.
That's correct. That $100 on the median home is a function of the fewer mills being levied, and that would be levied across all tax classes. So they would all be levied at 203. So when it's levied across all tax classes, you arrive at the 8.6 million.
Okay, thank you. That was kind of one question.
Go ahead.
Second question is, and I apologize. Well, maybe this is helpful for viewers out there, but also my ignorance. So how long can we follow the state statute? If we didn't go to the voters, would not our annual revenue continue to kind of decline some? Is that true?
Councilmember Gulick, I suspect that is true, that we will see either much slower growth in our tax base or potential decline. And I don't have enough skill to project which will occur. I mean, obviously it's very speculative, but those future year tax tiers, again, they're a function of the median home in Montana. And so long as residential properties in Billings do not grow at the same rate as that median home in Montana does, conceptually, these tiers get larger. I'll go back to that. Tier 2 may get larger in each year because the max is 2 times the median home. And so some of those homes that were in tier 3, because they're not growing as quickly as the statewide average, could fall down in tiers. I speculate that's what we would see in Billings, that the statewide average would increase slightly quicker than it does in Billings, but I don't have the data to even see if that's been the past experience or not. That's purely my speculation.
Okay, very good. Council, we've been around. Let's open it for public comment. It is 8:34, so we want to keep moving, and we appreciate everybody's patience. This is a public opportunity for public comment on item 3, the impacts of these 2 pieces of legislation, neither of which, we probably should have said this from the beginning, have been signed into law. They aren't law yet, but they have been passed by the legislature, and obviously they had the support of the governor going in. So it's highly, highly, highly likely they will be passed. So with that, please come to the podium. Just ask you to make a little line there so we know who else wants to testify. Just ask you to tell us your name and address and keep your comments to 3 minutes. Who would like to comment on item number 3? Chickens? Yeah. Okay. Very good. Next. Go ahead, wrap up your. Okay, thank you very much. Next.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right, good. Sorry, I felt like I was back at the legislature for a minute. My name is George Richards. It's Richards. I live at 1824 Bannock Drive in Billings. I serve as the president of the Montana State Firefighters, Professional Firefighters, and the Montana State Council of, or the Montana State Firefighters Association. Two organizations. It's kind of unique. Montana is the only state that has two organizations. I represent roughly about 1,200 firefighters, men and women across the state, from Glendive to Kalispell. Why am I here? 231, which I'm not really, I shouldn't say I'm not that concerned about 231 because I feel like 542 is going to be the bill. I truly believe that's the one the governor is probably going to sign. And why am I here? Because I just spent the last 45 days at the legislature working firefighting bills. We roughly handled about 35, probably an additional 15 that dealt with just strictly public safety or levy taxes or putting caps on that stuff. So let's get to the point, 231. That was going to go through. We tried everything we could as firefighters. And first of all, the firefighters that work under me and work at the legislature, they're not hired. They're firefighters throughout the state of Montana that volunteer to go work the Capitol. And if you've never been up at the Capitol, I suggest you go up there and spend some time because things, when you go from the third to the first floor, they change. Just a matter of just walking down those stairs, the bill has already changed. And sometimes I wish I was in the basement most of the time. So what do we have? When we went up there, we had an option of 231. It's not the problem of the council at the time because the city of Billings wasn't invited to the table. So we took that on as a mission as firefighters to do what we could to soften the blow for the city of Billings. Because they offered us one amendment at the time. And that was just to move it by 1 year. And that wasn't going to work because I had to worry about 18 firefighters and now case 28 firefighters potentially in the city of Billings. We worked hard, 45 days up there working this bill. And we managed to get those amendments. We managed to get some of the language so that the city of Billings can have some options moving forward so we don't jeopardize public safety. Public safety was the #1 argument on those amendments. If you don't believe me, go back and look at the testimony on the floor. Go look back on the testimony in the committees. The reason why those amendments on there were because of public safety and not to short the city of Billings that option. So I'll leave it at that. I'll stand by for more additional questions if you'd like. And I guess I don't have any more time. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Other public comment?
Members of the council, my name is Jeff Chartier. I'm addressing you tonight as the president of the Billings Police Officers Labor Union. Some of you know me, you've seen me around your sessions before, looking much different than I do right now, but tonight I'm in my official capacity. As of today, May 5th, I've been on this job 30 years and 10 months. So that means I do not have more knowledge or I'm the senior detective. My whole generation is retired out from under me. I call them quitters. But I'm here to speak for the generation of younger officers that have come in underneath me. I cannot speak for the agency. I cannot speak for the chief or his command staff. But I can speak to this. I don't have answers, but I know you have big decisions that are going to have to happen. I'm on shift working right now. Only 2 detectives on a night like this. One of them's down there wondering if I'm going to come back at the bottom of those stairs. I'm saying all that to say this. You have big decisions to make. I don't know what the answers are, but you will have to choose on where you're going to spend a limited amount of money, right? That's what this looks like. Our money is going to go like this. It's going to get smaller. And like some of you, I'm a true sociologist at heart. I believe that improving the community does improve the community. But we're going to come down to hard decisions that will have to be made. I'm cautious about throwing certain things under the bus publicly like this, but it comes down to things like library books, trails, and parks being kept and watered, and dog parks and things like that, or 911. Which one are you going to choose? Some of you have the capability to defend yourselves and your property if the thin blue line shrinks and crumbles, but you're in the minority. Most people do not. They rely on the thin blue line. They rely on the fact that they call 911. A phone operator and a dispatcher that work for the fire department take that call, and a uniformed police officer comes. He's coming now. And if he has colleagues available, they're coming with him. And if it develops into more and something that goes longer than that, that small group of detectives will get out of bed, come and take over and handle it. Without that thin blue line, the fingers are in the dike. Without that thin blue line, the city will become less good. It's not a terrible place, but it's not fairy tale land. And after 3 decades, I've lived through the bad years. Right now, it's okay. But the next bad year is always around the corner. So, just speaking on behalf of my people, when the big decisions, please make the right ones.
Good, thank you. Other public comment, please come to the podium. Is there any other public comment before we close the public comment period?
Hi, good evening. My name is Jacob Wilkins. I'm the president for the firefighters union here, address 2129 White Rose Circle. I'm just here tonight to ask you all, encourage you to select what the legislature set forth, go with the 240 mills, and then take your time to correctly move forward from that point. Not rush into anything, be calm, and move forward in a very concise manner. That is all. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any other public comment? Before we close the public comment period? No one is coming forward, no one's standing up, so we'll close the public comment period. Thank you for everybody for your input, and feel free to continue to send emails to the city council and to staff. Back to council discussion motions. How would you like to proceed? Councilor Boyette?
Thank you, Mayor. I had to write mine down because I didn't want to be bad and forget it. I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to develop a budget that maintains the FY25 property tax revenue in the FY26 year, and begin planning for a mill levy question to voters for the FY27 budget. I think this complies with the law because 27 is not mentioned in there. And then lastly, throughout my life, most of the time I'm
just gonna ask if there's a second before we ask you to address
Okay.
your second by Councilmember Shaw. Okay, go ahead, Councilmember
Most of the
Boyette.
time during my life, I was always in charge of people. In the Air Force, I had people. The Sheriff's Department, I had people. And even banking, I had lots of people. The one thing I had to do, though, was protect my people. We need to do that. That's it.
Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. I 100% agree. I think we've worked really hard to get to this place with public safety, with feeling like it's finally being appropriately funded, and it's taken years. And this is going to take us not only back to 6 years ago, but even farther beyond that, which would be just very disappointing, I think, for this body and for our citizens who have come to rely on those services, have voted for those services. So I am very loath to try and cut public safety, but there is no other way to make up a $10 million shortfall. So I firmly believe this is the right path based on the legal analysis. We move forward with the 240 mills. We take our time, think about what a ballot question would look like, spend time educating our community so we're not rushing into something in just a few months, because it's very difficult and complicated to understand, I think. And we need to be able to have some language to educate people so they actually understand what they're voting for. I think just even in some of the public comments, we're not talking about the city increasing anyone's taxes. The state's already going to lower taxes. That's going to happen no matter what. We're talking about the people in the city of Billings getting a slightly less reduction so that we can maintain the services that we already have here, which are critical for our community. So I would advocate that we move forward with this.
Very good. You have a motion on the table. Further discussion. Councilmember Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this motion is unfortunate. I think we heard the city administrator, the city attorney say tonight, there's not an inherent obligation to go to the voters for a mill levy change. That's not necessary yet. There's a lot that we don't know right now, right? We don't know what the implementation process is going to look like. We don't know what the legislature is going to do in the interim session. We don't know, quite frankly, how our community is going to grow over the next year. So I'm not willing to commit tonight to say we're absolutely going to go ask for more money. We still have some work to do. I think it's really important that people hear that, to Councilmember Shaw's point, there's tax reduction no matter what, under any scenario. And I think it's also important that we not lose sight of the fact that under any scenario, there are budget cuts that will have to be made. It's either 2 million, 10 million, but there will be budget reductions no matter what, and we need to be serious about that. I think by saying tonight that we will inherently, no matter what, go forward on a mill levy request in the future, we've ignored the fact that right now, in all candor, the public isn't with City Council. The public doesn't inherently trust us. And in fact, there is a lot of frustration that it seems like when there are budget issues, we immediately sort of have a narrative. I am not interested in setting us back on public safety in any way, shape, or form. But I also am interested in showing the public what the path looks like from where we are today to where the state is mandating us to go. And it's why I supported the idea of establishing a budget at 203 and bringing, as Mr. Iflin said, the series of programs that are in there that are not being funded, so that we can have a real adult conversation and show the public why they should or should not support the decisions that are being made. I think, even though I have some disagreements with the validity of the law, I think we're going to end up where we're going to end up at. But there is a process that really matters here to show the public where we are going, the consequences of the impact. I don't think we've done the work yet, and we certainly, in my opinion, have not done the work to do an assumption tonight of going out for a mill levy in the future. So my preference would be that we prepare a budget at 203 and then discuss what happens if we don't go to 240. Because I think it's important to communicate that in much more clarity and much more detail to the public than we have done right now. Because I likewise, public safety, I've advocated for it. I will continue to advocate for it. But we need to show our work, essentially. We need to show the public why we're doing what we're doing. And while I could get on board with a process that said, show us 203 and then show us what happens when we go to 240, I can't tonight commit to a mill levy. That to me is too far. So.
Yeah, and I'm just going to, I think, Councilor Shaw, I may say, the motion did not direct staff to move ahead with a 2000 or fiscal year 27 mill levy, but the phrase was
to start preparing one.
To begin planning for. So that would be a year down the road. It's a planning process. I'll look to the move-ins to clarify, but what I heard was the phrase was begin planning.
But even
and Councilmember Boyette, is that what you said? And then is that your intent? Okay, Councilmember Shaw, is that consistent with your motion?
Yes, I just want to clarify that we're not authorizing anything tonight.
I agree. But we are presuming that we will ask for more money. And I don't like that.
That is not the presumption of the motion.
Okay, help me
At least
understand.
it wasn't my presumption.
Okay.
That we're entering into a process to study and understand more. That's the next step.
I guess my preference.
That's what planning is in my mind.
No, I hear you. My preference would be we deal with 26 tonight, and move forward in that way. But I cannot stress enough my intent to show the public the impacts and to be transparent and to try to earn a little public trust back here, because I don't think we're there tonight. I think it's really important, as I said earlier, that we be very clear that this is a state-imposed mill. This is not something that we voted for. It's out of our hands. But I also think we need to show the public more detail in the budget. So I will think about what you've said, but I'm very concerned about presupposing 27 at this point.
Very good. Thank you for the discussion now on the motion. Councilmember Bernice?
Yeah, I'm concerned that we're going to just jump to 240 in the budget process without actually looking at what it actually does. And I think Councilmember Owen is correct. I think skipping that process we're going to lose an awful lot of education to the public. We even, as we heard from public testimony tonight, we are not explaining ourselves well to the public. This is a tax reduction no matter what. I think Andy said, even if you levy 300 mills, which we're not even talking about, we're still looking at tax reductions. And so this is just a difference in readjusting the way the state legislator has converted the value of a mill, and we're just readjusting the level to still raise funds in order to pay the fire, the police, the attorneys, Andy and his staff. And so at the same levels that we want, but we need to actually look at this because of what the state did is devaluing the mills. We're required to, by our charter, and I appreciate Gina's opinion on this, but I tend to disagree that we're required to stick to our 203 mill cap and split up in different things. But I believe, as Councilmember Owen said, there is some possibility that we may be able to follow some state statute as well at the same time. But I am concerned that we're going to skip that process. I think we need to make sure we look at what it is for the 203 at the budget, and then where are we looking to really cut to get to that 203, and what is so essential that we can't cut it where it's going to jeopardize public safety, that we need to make sure that we include those and then increase those mills based upon what the state's giving us. And Mayor, if you don't mind, I do have one question for Gina.
Go ahead.
Gina, I think when I asked you about the shall and the may, and then later on they said something changed in the amendment. So I'm confused now as far as what the state is. Does the state say thou shall the first year, or is it may the first year?
In the first year, it is shall.
It is shall and may on the second year.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So it is the shall in the first year. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Further discussion, Councilmember Aspenwater?
I won't repeat what I started earlier at the wrong time, apparently, but I understand the need to show the difference, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. In the process of going through this budget, I think inherently we're gonna have those conversations, we're gonna make those decisions, and we're gonna communicate that to the public. It is our job to communicate to our constituents and to explicitly show what we're doing and where we're proposing to do it. I didn't take that motion as us jumping immediately to a ballot measure in 2027. My understanding and my hope for this council is that as we go through this first year following the law and we head into fiscal 27, we're understanding and communicating all along the way to the public exactly what this means. And if we are going to try to make up the $1 million or $1.2 million difference in fiscal 27 from fiscal 26, then it will be incumbent upon us to explain exactly what that means. But I don't think playing with a 203 mil cap budget and with every intent of passing 240 is something that needs to be completely focused in on at this point in time. I mean, we have departments that have to build budgets, and going through an exercise like this is important at some point in time, but we have to get a budget prepared in June. And we have to have a general understanding of what that is. I can't imagine that it's going to be that hard to say, hey, what's 11% out of your budget? Give me what that looks like. For us to try to levy what those cuts would be on on an 11% reduction to the city budget and try to hone that in just so that we can say, hey, we're going to shut down the entire park system, or we're going to assess 240 mills. We're never going to agree what that 203 mil is amongst this body. We're not. We can't hardly agree on what a budget is anyway. So when you try to make something with that drastic of cuts, I mean, we're going to create such friction and fissures in this body to go through an exercise when our intent is to pass a 200, to follow the law, we need to be mindful of what that's going to do to the cohesiveness of this body and our ability to continue to work going forward. That is certainly a concern of mine. I'm going to support the motion as it's intended. I don't think that the motion says we're going to pass inherently a mill cap increase in 27. But we do need to be thinking about that. I mean, we're going to have a shortfall in 27, and we have to be thinking about that as we develop this budget and next year's budget, which means we have to communicate. If we're not communicating, we're not doing our jobs. And that would be my challenge to all of us as council. We are in uncharted waters at this point in time. And it's incumbent upon us to do the work to communicate to our constituents.
Very good. Continue with the discussion. I would encourage us not to quote call the questions so that everybody's had a chance to weigh in on this. Councilmember Kennedy.
I will support going up to 240. But I would like to see it, like Councilwoman Owen has said, that we have the allocated charter budget of 203, and then the other additional goes with the bill that goes through the legislature as mandated, and then that would signify that what we have is, this is where our charter was, this is what the legislature had for us to go forward. I do have one concern, and I'll vote for this motion and move it on, but there's going to be a discussion on the mill levy in the future. So I don't think anyone should look at this as we're going to go forward with the mill levy, because I think one thing with the public, and I was a little taken back with the letter that went out on public utilities, because we were very definite when we said that there wouldn't be a raise in the water fees and the other fees, and we sent that out. But we sent it out as 2 years. And the only thing people centered in on was the second year and the increases. And I think it took away from that we actually froze the fees and didn't raise anything for this year. And then we'll address it again next year. And so, you know, I think you need to be very careful on saying we're definitely going to have or go forward with the mill levy. You know, we should be discussing in the budget committee in the as we go forward, and we should be discussing what the future years are going to be. But I really do think that we're not planting for people that this is what we have to do. I think I agree. We need to do some planning, but it's, you know, what happens next year does happen next year. And we're not going forward. Some of you will be here, some of you won't. And, you know, it's incumbent upon us to try to get this year's budget and make sure that we have, and I'll tell you once again, I'm voting to go forward with this because I want to make sure that this community has the police and fire that's going to protect the community. And that's what I hear day in and day out from my constituents.
Thank you, Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Rowe?
I just have a couple of questions, if that's all right.
Sure.
That have come up in the course of this conversation. So, Kevin, if I could, we're going to have a budget committee meeting on Wednesday. Who's coming and who's prepared to present? I guess what I'm trying to get at is, can we still have these conversations in the budget committee about programs, costs, all these sorts of things, that whether, you know, regardless of the budget level, we're going to have to cut $2 million this year and potentially another 1 or so next year. What level of discussion are we prepared to have in the budget committee beginning this Wednesday, based on the fact that you gave staff direction to start contemplating scenarios?
Yeah, Councilmember Owen, this Wednesday, I wouldn't expect much other than a refinement of the process, quite honestly, because it was late last week
Yeah.
that we did have that meeting with the directors. I can defer to Andy to see if he's got anything further prepared for Wednesday, along these lines and go from there.
Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. I guess I just want to make sure that if we move forward on this 240 idea tonight, that we will still be provided, at least in budget committee, the level of granularity necessary to have very serious conversations about fiscal constraint, even in this scenario. And I'm concerned that if we say 240 tonight, we'll just sort of be like, phew, and then walk back. So can we continue to have very granular discussions in the budget committee?
So Councilmember Owen, yes, if that's where the majority of the council wants to go, I'd really like to know that because that really does stir things up. I mean, because we're going to be naming people when we name these programs that are brought out like that. So yes.
But see, that's the
if you're
challenge I'm
correcting
having
us to do
is we need to have conversations about cuts no matter what. And I understand we don't want to go all the way to the bone. I get that, but we still need to have information. And I'm concerned that what you're telling me is we're just going to breathe a sigh of relief, bring our budgets, and that's it. Am I mischaracterizing?
No, our direction, we can bring you, the budget cuts at whatever level, we need to go down to. And that was part of, the conversation we had of let's go down to that 18%, farther than the 11.5% of if it was normalized with cuts straight across the board. And then depending on action from council tonight, we can start looking at. So we should have identified things that can be cut at the top and then start working our way down on where we need to stop on each department independently.
Okay, so I think then, I assume, Gina, you have not thought any more about my proposal of, okay, I didn't assume that it would have gotten done that fast. So, we have had a little colloquy over here about the intent of the motion. I think there's some disagreement as to whether or not we actually are required to go out for mill or not. I don't think we are. I'm going to very reluctantly support our direction here tonight. I am going to continue to fight for a line item budget because I think that gives the level of transparency that we need at an appropriate level. I'm going to continue to insist that even if we move forward with complying with state law, that we will be very serious about restricting the budget growth, addition of new FTE, that we will fund our public safety. This is not sort of a free-for-all in the budget area. We still need to make cuts. We need to have very serious conversations about them, and we need to continue looking at a fiscally restrained budget. And then I think I'm going to continue to insist that the FY27 conversation be conceptual and not a plan to go out and ask for more tax dollars. That's critically important to me, that we are not going to sit here tonight and say, we're real sure we're not making that extra million in cuts. We're real sure we're going to ask for more. I will not lose sight of the potential jail levy. That's as critical to public safety as anything else that we have to do here tonight. So I'm very concerned about the way we're moving forward. I'm very hopeful we will conclude that this can be separated out and called what it is, which is a state-imposed levy on the people of Billings. But I think for at least planning purposes, I will very reluctantly support this tonight.
Very good. Councilmember Aspenleiter, I'm just going to ask, I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to weigh in. So if you make it quick, or go ahead. Okay, then I'm going to weigh in. I don't see, and Tom, okay. I don't see any, this is not a tough question for me. The state law is clear. I mean, the consequences are very difficult. There's no doubt about that. But the state law is crystal clear. Now, there's a very legitimate constitutional issue, and we'll have to fight that out in court if somebody wants to sue us. but I'd much rather be on the side. I'm not in the habit of purposefully telling the city we need to invest money defending a lawsuit where we're so clearly inconsistent with state law. So that's it on the legal issue. Also, I don't see any need to send the message to virtually all city employees that their job may be in jeopardy. When we've got, and especially public safety, when we've got 80% of that $10 million invested in public safety, we would be firing police officers, and we certainly wouldn't be hiring anymore. And the same goes for our fire services as well. Also, we would not be able to we would have to have a freeze, an absolutely solid freeze on any new hires, no matter how important they might be. And that also sends the wrong message. And also, remember that today, post 240 or 542, 203 mill levies would be the equivalent of roughly 170-ish mills in the past. We've had the ability to levy 170 mills for years after year after year, and we have not done that. We've made the decision to go up to that cap because that's what our constituents want. So to do that now, when we don't have to, would be clearly inconsistent with years of past decisions by this body. So I certainly will be voting in favor of the motion. Councilmember Ripsis, you wanted to weigh in?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad you find this an easy decision.
Well,
I don't. And I'm going to stick with my previous statement that I won't vote for a budget over 203 mils because that's what the citizens authorized. But I loathe the thought of what $10 million worth of cuts would look like. For me, principally, it's an issue of the state changing the rules of the game and having significant financial impact on our city. They did it a few years ago when they changed the rules for special districts. And it nearly devastated us with the expiration, the sunsetting of Park District 1. I don't like that we can follow all the rules and then at the last minute, the rug can be pulled out of us and we're faced with a no-win situation. We're handed a $2 million tax cut, even if we do the things that are not authorized in our charter. So I don't like that we're in this position. I think that we need to budget around 203 and be immediately out to the voters this fall for authorization to spend more than 203. I completely agree that the state has every right to do this. Right? I don't dispute our legal analysis at all. The state did what they can do, and they say we shall levy 240, and so we shall. That doesn't mean I think we have to budget that unless our voters give us specific authorization. And finally, I just want to say I said something last work session, I think, implying, and it wasn't intentional, implied that I didn't feel like our legislators, our Billings slate of legislators were really fighting for us up there. And that was not intentional at all. If you look at the votes on this bill 542, I think most all of our Billings representatives voted against it. And I appreciate that. That could not have been easy for them to be up there voting against the property tax cut in this environment. But they stood up for us. They understood the impact that this was having on our city. They understand, I think, the importance that this community places on that mill levy cap and how that has actually held our finances in check better than other places around the state. So that the whole pretense of the floating mill concept as a barrier to runaway government is false, demonstrably false. But I do recognize that the state has a very tricky situation trying to balance impacts when different jurisdictions tax differently. So I understand all those kinds of things. It's why it's not an easy decision for me. I do think on principle, we have to stand on our 203 and, like I said, be out immediately with a vote to the voters. I don't like it, but I will be voting against this motion right now. I do agree that we have to be out. If it's not this fall, we have to be out with a mill levy change. I think the long-term impact of tying property tax rates to the median property in the state probably does not bode well for a mill-based cap in the future anyway. That'll be somebody else's decision to make. I trust they'll make it wisely.
Very good. Thank you. Councilor Raffler.
So one quick question for Chris, and maybe this is a slight adjustment on the things that Andy said that you didn't listen to, but I'm sure you know. One of the things that we talked about, and I know a couple of us have kicked around, and I haven't run the initiative yet, is a reduction in council size. Working off the same timeline to get that on a ballot this year, when would we have to put that through our process with first reading, so on and so forth, to do, frankly, in my mind, reducing the size of council, reducing the cost in the administrative budget, and also making us a hell of a lot more efficient than having 11 of us sitting up here for a city our size. When can you get to a point or send us when we would need to run that initiative, put an ordinance and a vote forward to get that on a ballot this fall?
Yes, the timeline generally is like what Andy showed. Recognize our discussions have been so much about, and especially before, these opinions and these ideas that we couldn't or shouldn't levy something to affect this tax year, that our first focus was there on something that would affect the FY26 budget. This not being a budgetary issue at all, I assume we would work off of the general November election cycle and work backwards of the roughly 85 days from that process. And we can give you those precise dates either, and actually I think you have time to do it at the general, your primary, or the November. Both those dates can be put to you. It's gonna come quickly, both of them, the primary sooner than the general, but there is time for that question not being a tax question.
If you could get me the drop dead dates for both the general and the primary.
We can do that easily.
Okay. Councilor Katie, I'd suggest you don't follow up on that topic just because it's not germane and it's 11:15 or 9:15.
I might talk for another hour. One of some of the things that I would like to see come back to the budget committee. I think we're going to have to look at probably some type of salary freeze, and maybe it's at the top end at a certain salary range. The other things we're going to have to look at is vacancy savings. Those are all coming back to you, Chris, that you need to start bringing back to the budget committee so we can start talking about these. We're going to have to look at some other areas that we should look at and be able to come back and take out of the budget. I believe that Councilwoman Owen has said this over and over again, that we need to start look at, and Councilman Boyette, that we need to start looking at these areas so we can make these cuts. The one thing that we have had discussion on before is back and forth. The city administrator works for the council, and whatever budget we approve, you have the opportunity to do things with the budget. I want to make sure that we're on the same wavelength and that we're making cuts that are the right ones for the people in the city of Billings. And one of the things is, and I don't want it to happen in this budget year, but fighting against us on the fact that we needed to put more police on the streets. And I know, Chris, you really didn't want to go forward with that. And when we added the fire department too. So really, I'm hoping we're on the same wavelength as we start going into budget meetings. And we are going to have to make some reduction because we're going to be at the 2025 level. And those are the areas that I want to go forward on.
And we will have to do that. This isn't the Budget Committee meeting. Councilor Manise, I don't like the direction because we've got a motion. I want to get a vote on this. If it's strictly germane to the motion,
It is,
go ahead.
it is.
Okay.
Yeah, the question is for Andy. Andy, with the motion that we've got before us, I think it's 240 mils, right? And what's the second half that you believe that we're supposed to move towards? Just to want to clear, because there's been some confusion on, second half of the motion.
Dead battery.
There we go. Maybe it's alive now. Thank you. My understanding is the second portion is to begin planning for a levy, which I would imagine would involve dollar amounts, mills, timing, ballot language would be a very big question, and then coordination with the state law.
For the 240 or for some other amount?
Well, my understanding would be for something beyond.
On that, okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that's what you understand the motion. And then I think your information is just because we want to be specific. They said 240. Your presentation said 240.65, and so we're talking decimals here, but it's going to be hundreds or thousands of dollars. So what specifically do you need? The 240, or do you need the 240.65, or something a little bit less?
To be clear, my understanding of the motion is for revenue generated in 25 relative to revenue in 26.
Okay, thank you.
Irregardless of the number of mills.
Okay, thank you. I thought the motion was for an actual mill number, but not the, okay. Thank you for that clarification. This is tough because we're asking you to do something that I think is contrary to our charter, but it's following the state statute. My concern is that we're going to skip some process. I'm going to hope that Councilmember Owen and the Budget Committee can continue to ask hard questions as far as what areas to cut. And so I am going to support the motion, but I'm a little concerned that we're moving too fast, and there'll be time, I think, for the council to get involved in this mill levy discussion to maybe modify and change it. So I'll go ahead and support it, but I'm cautious. I don't agree with moving forward on a larger amount later on. But and I look forward to hearing from some of the Budget Committee on how they're holding your staff in the staff, Chrissy, your staff, as far as making sure they're really making good cuts. Because I think when we go out for a mill levy, if we don't have good rationale of what we saved and why we followed the state statute, so we didn't cut this or didn't cut that service to the people, we're going to have a really tough time having anything permanent from the voters. Thank you very much.
Very good. Council, are we ready to vote? Okay. So we'll just do a voice vote. Hopefully the motion is clear. So if in favor of the motion made by Councilmember Boyette, seconded by Councilmember Shaw, say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Voting in opposition were Councilmembers Tidswell, Rupsis, and only Councilmembers Tidsman, Islay, Tidswell, and Rupsis. So the motion passes. We're all present. So 9 in favor, 2 against. So that concludes item number 3. It's also consistent with or resolves the issues that staff gave to us. So I'll look to staff, but I assume you've got the direction you need. Chris, you comment on that?
Yes, thank you. And I'm not going to apologize for getting to watch my daughter sing a solo for, I do think it's very important, as I couldn't, in hearing Councilmember Aspenleiter express the concerns of the effects on this board, that the effects on the staff have equally, if not more so, as their livelihoods. I don't candidly care how cavalier we can be about this. At this table, when it affects your livelihood, it's a big deal. So I would ask that we're responsible professionals. There's nothing in the budget that isn't up for discussion in your policy direction to us as to what should be cut or what the priorities are. I would ask, please, that the 11 of you, when we go to making these tough budget decisions, that it really is imperative that we know what the direction is from the 11 and that we don't chase too far down the path, down a minority direction. And we'll work our way through that as we've not done this before. The committee process is still relatively new. In its first year or two, we didn't face anything like this, but it does matter. So say that. And Mr. Kennedy, have listened to your motions. We listened to them several times. Earlier today, you implied that we didn't bring you what you asked for. We brought exactly, I listened to the motion 3 times. You asked us for the overall maintenance cost in the budget. We brought the entire budget and specifically the custodial contract. So I want you to know we are listening, we are following, and as professionals, we will take whatever direction this majority body does, and we did it last year when you added the FTEs to the budget. The staff was directed and we moved forward diligently to hire every one of those positions that were in the budget. And we did it gladly. So thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Rogers? You sure? Okay. Okay, very good. That's, Chris, anything of upcoming agenda items that's on our agenda that you need to highlight? Any items of general council discussion? Public comment on non-agenda items. This is an opportunity to comment on something that was not on our agenda.
Hello, my name is Amy Aguirre. I am a constituent of Ward 3, also a candidate for City Council Ward 3 representative. I want to begin my comment with commenting on CM Aspenleiter's comment earlier. What I heard you say is that you were urging council to find common ground. Even if it's a contentious issue or not, finding common ground is important. But I felt compelled to comment tonight on the way last week's meeting went in regards to the custodial contracts being allowed to expire. It wasn't so much the permitting of the contracts to expire, though I 100% think union workers should be supported and retained whenever possible. But it was the way in which it happened. The first motion to have those agenda items stricken from the agenda was voted down, and that should have been the end of it. And then you heard from 2 of the union members speak to the nature of their work and how these were good jobs performed by good people. Additionally, a friend of mine works for the city and has nothing but high praises for those that clean his building. In the end, though, decorum in these chambers evidently permits underhanded and backdoor shutdowns, such as what we all witnessed last week. I was appalled and disgusted. My best advice is this: just because you can doesn't mean you should. Pulling moves like that are the reason staff morale is low and distrusting. And I guarantee you that once public trust is lost, you're just creating a whole lot more work for yourselves to try to get it back. I recently came across this quote from the book of Galatians, and I wanted to share this with you. My brothers and sisters, remember that you have been called to live in freedom, but not a freedom that gives free rein. Out of love, place yourselves at one another's service. The whole law has found its fulfillment in this one saying, love your neighbors as yourself. If you go on biting and tearing one another to pieces, take care. You will end up in mutual destruction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other public comment on items not on our agenda tonight? No one is coming forward, so we are adjourned. Thanks very much.